Just a couple of guys, a couple microphones, and a heck of a lot of know. It's Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the Know. I am Jim McPhee, and alongside of me is Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Odos? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the Know show. We are glad that you can make it because we are going to take over the 2024 draft here. We're going to do a review for you guys and kind of go team to team, let you know a little bit of our thoughts for each one. That's right, all 32 of them tonight. We're going to get it done. And also, we're going to take a look at look back at the 2021 NFL draft and see in the first round how many picks were hit on and how many picks they kind of just whiffed on. So that's what's going to be entailed for this whole episode. And if you would if you're new to the show, even if you've been here but you just haven't dived into the whole know-it-all experience, head over to YouTube for us. Make sure you subscribe for us, like, share, comment, all that jazz, and anywhere you get your podcast as well. This is what it's about. We finally get through the draft. Now it's like a sigh of relief for a lot of teams, a lot of front offices, and it's like, whew. Now we're in a state of mind. We're like, okay, well, now let's get the kids in. Let's start practicing. Let's do OTAs and prepare for training camp.
Yeah, and it's cool because you actually see everybody get right into it. They do. They get back and they're already on the field, kind of in the house, working with each other, getting the jerseys on, things like that, and starting to prep, what I mean, and get ready for the season. And it's super exciting, and that kind of gives you that push forward that you're like, this is it. The season is starting. It's coming, even though it's still months away for me.
We still got a little bit.
It's just warming up for us here.
That's right. It's getting closer now. Now we're at we're past the midway point.
Yeah, past the midway point, definitely. So Joe, it's an interesting draft here. We had a lot of fun. We actually were able to broadcast live during the show. Or during the draft, with our other show, we have the Blindside Blitz. By the way, guys, if you haven't checked it out yet, we have another show going on Tuesday nights, Blindside Blitz with Grumblings Media. Yep. Check it out, and anywhere you can check your podcast, and also grumblingmedia.com and on their YouTube page. So check out the stuff. If you like this show, you're going to like that show too as well. Yes. We really appreciate it. But we went live too.
We're there.
Yeah, and we had Roderick David, who's a former NFL scout for the Atlanta Falcons. And he still does scout work around, and stuff. And it was pretty cool getting the insight from him on things. And also Scott Engel, writer for Rotoballer and numerous other, he worked for the Seattle Seahawks too. They're writing for them too. Yep. And the king of fantasy, Scott Engel.
Yeah, fantasy football. So that was kind of cool to get his insight. And from a fantasy perspective, but also the dude knows football. He
had a lot of fun just talking.
He was talking some football knowledge with us, but also giving us some scenarios with each pick. It was a lot of fun. And then to have, like you said, Roderick David on was an extreme pleasure to have him on because we got to ask him questions we don't get to ask too many of our guests. A guy that has football knowledge in the NFL war room. Yeah. And we were able to ask him some questions that fans might have, for a little bit of insight of what happens in a war room, what happens with every pick. So was truly an honor for us, and can't wait to do it again.
Yep, here we go. So let's get to it here. The 2024 NFL Draft. Let's start off. We're going to go through alphabetical order here. Let's start off with the Arizona Cardinals here, Joe. And again, we all heard about what they wanted to do, and their Marvin Harrison Jr. was there, so it just made perfect sense. These top draft picks on the first night were pretty – cookie cutter, from the first couple through, maybe the top 7.
Top 9 probably was cookie cutter, pretty much except for maybe Atlanta's pick. But other than that, it was all pretty. It was like a lot of experts or the people that we talked to, like Scott Engel, he said it was pretty boring of a draft in the top half. So pretty much went the way people thought, but in the end, there were some surprise picks along the way, but Arizona wasn't one of them. They end up taking their guy, Marvin Harrison Jr., Max Melton to me in the third or second round, because they had 2 first-round picks. Yep. In the second round, to me, that's kind of like a stud pick. Like, I can't believe that Max Melton was hanging around there for them, and they were able to get a starter-worthy corner with their wide receiver pick in the first round and capitalize on that with true value. One pick I wasn't excited about, though, was Texas Tech defensive back Dadrian Taylor Demerson.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he would be more like a late round 6 to round 7 type of player who needs some further developmental skills to work on. So for him, like, I still think that he could develop into a rotational player at the very least, but I wasn't super excited about that pick for Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but overall, again, it looks like they got what they kind of like wanted to do. They wanted to try and fill the needs that they had and stuff. And now
They did a good job.
Kyler Murray has a stud wide receiver here for them. So that can only help him out in his career now, where he's kind of bouncing back from that injury. Started to look pretty good last year when he came back. But it's kind of still has question marks around him too. You know, he just locked in a better deal for him to stay with the Cardinals, but not having that playoff, success and things like that too, it's hindering on him, and without Kingsbury. So
Right.
We'll see what happens with them. But again, like you said, let's go to the Atlanta Falcons, Joe. The talk of the first night obviously was, again, Michael Penix Jr., where a lot of people thought he would have slipped, because of injury concerns and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
He was number 1 on your quarterback board in Atlanta. We started to hear rumors about it, that they were going to actually go draft quarterback. And your brother talked about it even that night. He's like, no, this is what I'm hearing, but please don't let it be true. Lo and behold, there it is, after they just get Kirk Cousins to lead them. And then after the draft, we end up finding out, too, the fact that he, according to the GM, is like a long-term plan, and then the owner's not keen on that, and it's really getting a lot of fans all riled up.
Yeah, a lot of the Atlanta Falcons fans were really, truly expecting a pass rusher or a corner, something of that nature to kind of bolster the defense, and we just didn't see that. Instead, they go with a quarterback, which isn't a need, which you don't need to prepare for the future just yet. You spend buku dollars on Kirk Cousins to bring him in for at least 3 years. You can get out of the contract in 2, but that was the thinking, I guess, was that they really did like Michael Penix Jr. so much to the point that they were like, well, we don't want to be in quarterback purgatory, so let's take our quarterback now. We don't plan on picking in the top 10, and let's just get this done now. Completely shocked the owner, just like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Had some explaining to do after that pick, and then as the draft went on, they addressed other needs in that way with the defensive line and pass rusher and all that. But, man, I got to tell you, everybody was surprised with that pick. Everybody. So for them to go ahead and do that and then announce that he's not in the recent plans, I think that was a little too much. He didn't even need to take a quarterback, period. I think it would have made more sense if they wanted to do that in day 3. Maybe take a Spencer Rattler. Maybe take a Jordan Davis later on. So, but, man, definitely surprised everybody. Their draft, it could turn out to be good, but we'll see. The whole thing for me is the Michael Penix pick, and he's not going to play at all for at least the first, what sounds like 3 to 4 years. And he's already like 24 years old. So I think it's a bogus pick. I don't think it was something that they needed. They needed a true impact player now, and they kind of go away from that. So Atlanta, to me, didn't do as good as they probably could have.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing for me. If you look at it now as well, they once they go quarterback there, that kind of screws up the rest of their draft for them right now. Don't you think, even, Joe? I mean, because you go and get that guy. So you're like, all right, we're going to go get this quarterback. So we went in to get the quarterback of the guy, the future we're going to go to right now. Okay, then you're going to make sense on that pick. But then we've seen it in multiple different drafts, like even with fantasy. When you still go for this stud guy, when it comes back around to get some of these other guys, you already kind of jacked it up. And where do you get, some of these other good values at the other positions here? And I think you got their draft a little off a little bit, I guess, in my point of view, I guess.
I just don't think they drafted well. They could have did better. And it started with that first pick. Mm-hmm. So, like, with that first pick, I know they were trying to trade down, and they weren't getting any takers. So or to their liking, I should say. Value wise with compensation. So I think they just kind of said, hey, we love this guy. We're going to take him now, and then he'll be our future quarterback. But your major needs or the value for some of the players that were available to you, you could have really had a plug and play type starter right now that could really contribute right now for your team, especially on a much needed talented defense. They have a decent secondary, but man, you top it off if you take Quinyon Mitchell there. You know what I mean? You kind of finish that secondary up for them going into the season. Or if you decided to go like D tackle, you could have went Byron Murphy. You could have went pass rusher. Any one of the pass rushers. They were all there. Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, whatever you liked, it was there. So if they started off the draft with one of those picks defensively and then into the second, you could have kind of then you could address another need or with value on top of it. And I just think they could have had a much better draft. And by taking the quarterback first that no one saw coming, not even the owner, it kind of sets back this team to prepare for the future. With defensively speaking, that is.
Yes.
Going to the Ravens.
The Ravens, Joe.
Yeah.
So, the Ravens here, again, they're solid. Every time they draft here, again, they go to draft, best player available, what's there. And it's usually somebody good, and they didn't have to do a whole lot here and fill in some needs.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite pick was obviously Nate Wiggins, slid to them all the way, 30th overall in the first round. I think this kid's going to end up developing into a shutdown corner for them. He needs to add more weight. He needs to give it. He's a little light in the cleats. You know what I mean? In terms of weight, he definitely needs to get more physical. And by doing so, if he gains weight, gains muscle, he's going to be able to be a better tackler that way. I feel like at college, he shied away from contact a little bit. He couldn't tackle as well because the dude is a string bean. Definitely needs to put on weight and muscle and strength. So I think at the next level, the coaching staff is going to definitely get that all put together for him, working on his training to gain weight, to gain strength, and that way it'll make him a better all-around player at the next level. Other than that, I think they did, just like you mentioned, Jim, the value. They just kind of let the value come to them, and they capitalized on it. Getting TJ Tampa later on was insane to me. I couldn't believe he slid as far as he did. But one pick I really wasn't excited about was running back from Marshall, Rasheen Ali. I don't think he's going to be too much of a difference maker. I see him he might not even make the roster in my eyes. I don't think he's that special to where he might be a practice squad guy at the very least. So maybe special teams if he makes it, but other than that, practice squad guy.
All right, let's move on next to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills making moves and moving backwards here. They were definitely backing it up all the way out. Which allowed even Carolina into the first round. But Buffalo, whole time, again, we were looking at, is there going to be one of these wide receivers here for them? Because that's what you got to do. You lost Stephon Diggs. So what were you going to do? You're going to get one of these wide receivers.
I mean, wide receivers are super deep. So there was no worry about getting one of. You know what I mean? They could have even, if they were that worried about receiving the receiving core, then they could have addressed it multiple times. You know what I mean, throughout the draft. And they traded back out of 28 to 33 into the top of the second round with Carolina Panthers trade there. It still were able to get a very, very top-end talent, very good talent in Keon Coleman from Florida State. Large and in charge type of wide receiver. This guy can do everything, has a wide catching radius, phenomenal hands, runs decent routes, and the knock on him was speed, was like acceleration. Can he get to top-end speed quick enough? Well, I think it was displayed very well at the Combine, doing one of the drills, getting up to 23 miles an hour. So no question for me, no question about him. He's going to definitely be a playmaker right away for that team in a much-needed position. And for the rest of the draft, they did a very solid draft. They're going to get multiple starters out of this draft, I feel, with different positions. And I don't really have a negative on them because they did such a solid job throughout.
Yeah, and they've got to do something here too, because after having the limited success that they've gotten to the playoffs so many times, just not been able to reach that upper echelon here after this. they got to do it now, I think, too. Next, we got the Carolina Panthers to move on to, Joe. Again, like I said, they just jumped into the first round to get their guy. And then that's the wide receiver Xavier Legette, which was a nice pickup for them. Again, was another guy that they needed to help Bryce Young and get some more offense here, other than relying on like an Adam Thielen to be your guy.
Yeah, before we get to that, we got a know-it-all in the house. Eric Bowers comments in. He says, everyone shit on them trading with KC, but they got a stud in Keon Coleman. Absolutely. And that's the thing is they knew the value that was there with wide receivers. They could afford to trade back, get an extra pick or two, and still get a guy that they really like. So good on the Bills. Carolina was like, we just want to at least have a first-round pick, so let's trade up. And then they go and get their wide receiver, Xavier Legette, which guy still needs to work on some things, especially like route running. But, man, what a strong athlete. He's much like a Deebo Samuel in terms of his body type. Very solid, very strong, and stout. So he's got tremendous speed to go with that. 4.3 40 speed, which is impressive. But, again, he just needs to work on the route running concepts at the next level, and he will be a better player at the NFL level. Other than that, I was pretty excited for Jonathan Brooks to be drafted as their second pick, but at the same time, it felt like it was really, really early for any running back to be selected. After that pick, though, they went with a lot of other draft picks that were kind of like very big on developmental traits. Jatavion Sanders, tight end, he's going to be just a receiving guy for you. Maybe that works out well with Bryce Young. Maybe it could be his new favorite target, but we'll have to see with the rest of the guys. It looks like they're hit or miss type of draft picks.
All right, we've got Eric Bowers with a few different comments here. He goes, the window's closing on the Bills to get to the Super Bowl. And then Mike Tackett is in the house. He says, I don't care how fast anyone is. If you're a 165-pound wide receiver running across a secondary, that's Antonio Brown CTE waiting to happen. He says, love the new show, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Mike
it,
Tackett.
Mike.
Hashtag know it all.
Absolutely. Thank you for checking it out. And, a lot to come, you guys. So we're going to keep doing it. You guys stay tuned, and we definitely appreciate the support from all you guys out there.
Definitely trying to make moves here. Eric Bowers, going back to your comment, window closing on the Bills, I don't think so. As long as you have a franchise quarterback, I think the window's still open. When teams get to that point where like they don't know what the future holds at that position, that's when things get a little scary. But they still have all the defensive personnel. They still have the offense. Yes, they don't have Diggs anymore, but this offense, I think, is going to be just fine. They're going to be able to utilize the two tight ends that they have on the roster. They're going to use some of their receivers from last year that kind of started to come on into the season late that showed some spark, and then a little bit of spazz there as well. And then you got Keon Coleman, who's coming in, is going to be a difference maker for them, moving the chains, catching the ball down the field. So I don't necessarily believe the whole window closing argument is in full effect just yet. Mike Tackett, I have to agree about the whole CTE thing. It doesn't matter how fast you are. If you're that light and you take one good hit in this game, one really good one, when your body isn't used to be taking a very hard hit with big men, like these guys are the best of the best in this sport. And if you take a hit from them, especially solid, you could break a rib. Like there's a lot of things that could go wrong for a wide receiver that light at 165. So Xavier Worthy, I think, is who he's alluding to. Guy is faster than fast. But man, that kid, I'm a little concerned about at the next level. When it comes to getting off the line, he's going to get jammed. If there's a defensive coordinator that's smart, he's going to want his guys to press up on him, get physical with him, knock him off his route. Do not let him get a clean break. So that to me is going to be interesting to see what Andy Reid does in the Kansas City Chiefs, because Reid is so creative with his offense. He's going to try to find ways to get him free on motions and being able to just have a free release that way. So it'll be an interesting strategy game with Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Speaking of the Chiefs, again, Eric Bauer says still have to figure out the riddle that is the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's probably what he's talking about with the Bills possibly when they make it to the playoffs. I guess that's what he was bringing up. I mean, when he was talking about the Bills, don't
I
know.
think he just means like that offense with having Worthy in there and everything,
Perhaps.
because the Kansas City Chiefs offense, they adapt. As long as they have Andy Reid, bottom line, like everybody criticized Tyreek Hill moving on, and I get it. I criticized the Chiefs. I'm like, they're not going to be the same, and they weren't. They weren't the same type of offense.
they weren't. Yeah,
they weren't that explosive, deep down the field offense that they used to be with Hill. They had to change things. They had different styles of wide receivers, and they changed things. They made it more short to intermediate game, and still were able to rack up points. So they're going to do the same thing with new additions like Worthy, where they're going to figure out a different way to get him to be in open space and see what he can do with the speed. Mike Tackett goes, Buffalo's biggest loss this offseason is Jordan Poyer's wife. Oh, Jesus.
What the heck? Oh, man,
Mike, we appreciate you. What? Going on to the Chicago Bears here. Obviously, the first 2 picks, it's almost like a home run for the draft, just based on having 2 picks in the top 10. Caleb Williams, a lot of people are super excited about him. Rome Odunze at 9. Amazing talent that slides to them there. After that, it's kind of like they didn't have a ton of picks at that point. A lot of trading from a year ago that went on to where they grabbed a potential tackle. They're starting punter now in Torrey Taylor, because that dude can boom footballs. But Caleb Williams, really wasn't excited about him being 1 overall. I didn't have him that high because, to me, there's a lot of red flags. Not just his athletic ability. His athletic ability is really good. Like, it's rare. His arm is amazing. His power that he has, the accuracy that he has, being able to make off-platform throws, the mobility, all of that, and the size that he has. Yeah, he's not the tallest guy, but he's still kind of stout. He's got some build to him. It's everything else. It's the simplistic offense he played in at USC, like a one-read type of offense, and after that, you figure it out. That's why you saw him moving around and creating time a lot in a lot of plays, and sometimes just taking off. At the next level, you can't get away with that. You got to go through your progressions. You got to know the plays. You got to know where every receiver is going to be. There's going to be a lot more pressure for him, especially being the number 1 overall pick, to be able to do that at the highest level there is. So other than that, it's personal. It's like, what are you getting a leader in this kid? Because we didn't see a leader in college. We saw a guy that was, upset at times and not with the team, was off with, his significant other or his mom, and upset and all that. So there's some question marks I have with him being able to lead, not just in college, but now you're leading men at the next level. So there's some confusing points about him personally that I think we're going to get all answered now that he's with Chicago. Mike Tackett goes, could Chicago pursue Mac Jones as insurance if Caleb Williams' experience starts to go sour? Interesting enough that you say that, Mike, because the New England Patriots did not exercise the 5th-year option, or not New England Patriots.
The Jaguars?
The Jaguars did not exercise the 5th-year option on Mac Jones. So, and they got to pay Trevor Lawrence. Like, they're planning on giving him an extension. So I think by doing that, of course, they don't want to pay him big bucks, but most likely it sounds like Mac Jones is going to be one and done in Jacksonville and is going to be a free agent, unless maybe they come to terms on a lower term deal. But Mac is young still. He's going to want to prove to everybody that he could still be a starter. So I think it's one and done in Jacksonville, becomes a free agent, and then who knows? Maybe Chicago will pick him up next season if it's all if they're not very confident, that is, in his development.
Zach Wilson's in the same boat too with the Broncos too. The same thing. They did not pick up his 5th-year option either, and he's going to be out there.
Yeah, but they got a draft. They already drafted their quarterback. So
yeah, exactly. No,
it makes all the sense in the world for them. Because why would you pay a quarterback who's basically going to be your backup and exercise that 5th-year option that's going to be over $20 million for the year?
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Yep. But overall, again, I think with Chicago, for the limited picks that they had, they did a good job of just, again, helping out that offense and filling some spots. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what that offense is going to look like this year. You know what I mean? So let's see what they can do.
I mean, it's the best situation to go to if you're a quarterback getting drafted high like that. So if he can't do it with Chicago and what they have for at his availability there, then then he wasn't worth the pick.
Do you think Caleb Williams, when he walked by Keenan Allen, do you think he recognized him this time or no?
There's
Or
a good
acknowledged him?
chance. There's a good chance in the facility. Like,
Yeah.
oh, apparently they made up.
Oh, did they?
They cleared the air.
Oh,
They
boy.
made up and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. It's
Oh,
just-
yeah.
But that's what I mean. That
Stupid
goes
stuff,
back
right?
to the point of a leader.
Yeah.
Like, you should be welcoming your receivers.
yeah.
You should be,
Yeah.
be excited to work with them. And at his pro day, it didn't look so much.
We had the Bengals going there, but we'll wait just a second because we have John Turner's in the house with us tonight, Joe.
What's going on, John? Welcome to the show, bro. Said that Caleb Williams is from my hometown and will be a bust. Mark my words. He's arrogant, full of hubris, and a narcissist. That equals getting sacked a lot. Patrick Ramsey 2.0. Interesting.
He hits all the checks.
It's all, John. I'm glad that I'm not alone in this because I'll tell you, and that's the thing is like he comes off like that. Like when we watched the draft and just his persona, how he presented himself, like just super arrogant, super like overconfident throughout the whole. Because he's like, oh, I know I'm getting picked number 1. There's no surprise. Like I know my future's set. And it seems like he feels like he's God's gift to the NFL now. So I think it's gonna. I agree with John. I think it's gonna come back to bite him in the ass, and he's gonna get knocked down a peg or two.
Yeah.
Now we're on to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, on to Cincinnati, Joe. On to Cincinnati. There you go. There's the Bengals right
That's right.
there.
They start with Georgia tackle Amarius Mims. I love that pick. It's a pick where they've been trying to get this offensive line locked down for Joe Burrow to help him stay upright and not get injured and all these other issues that he's had so far in his career. It's been a protection problem. So now they go ahead and they draft another tackle. This guy is not a polished product, though. So as much as I absolutely love this dude as a tackle at the next level, he has to refine some of his techniques and whatnot, needs to pick up the pace in terms of moving his feet a little bit faster. But, man, the guy's a mountain. He's humongous. He's like 340, and he's like 6'8", 6'9". Crazy size. So he's definitely going to be able to reach out and touch someone, pause at the next level, and be able to lock down some of these pass rushing ends. So really love that pick. And I kind of like the rest of their draft. There's little nuances throughout the draft where they got guys that they can further develop, like you mentioned before, off camera, Jermaine Burton, a guy from Alabama, very fast, very gifted receiver, but needs to be a little bit more consistent with his hands. Chris Jenkins, I absolutely love this pick. It fills a void. They were aging at the interior D tackle spot. They plug and play young Chris Jenkins is going to do the job for them. And Eric All, super excited about him. I hope he stays healthy because if he stays healthy, he's got like George Kittle talent. And the biggest thing is, can he stay healthy with his back injury from 2 years ago? Can he just stay healthy in general? So overall, love the Bengals draft. They got a lot of depth. They got value with a lot of these picks. So I think they did a good job as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, again, I think at that number 80 pick with Burton, I think again, if you can fix some of those catching issues, I think it's good value there for them to grab him there in that wide receiving core. So
Yeah,
I think
just
it's a good.
tell him he has a requirement.
He has a
After
requirement.
every practice, you have to hit the jugs machine for at least 2 hours.
Yeah, and like I said, it's like one of those head scratchers. You see him miss some of the easy ones, but then on some of the
Tough
I've
ones
seen
he
him make
makes.
some good tough ones. Yeah,
That's focus.
Yes.
That's what that is. So if they can get him to lock in at every single snap and give it 100% every single snap, he'll be fine.
All right, next up, we've got the Cleveland Browns, which, again, we've heard recently, too, with everybody, or Schefter at least saying, now the deal is officially done here with Deshaun Watson and all that stuff. So, because the picks were
Thank
actually
God.
made here now. So, like, oh, wow, okay. But here we go, Cleveland Browns trying to get some stuff done. What do you think about the Browns, Joe?
Browns, they didn't have a lot of picks, and they tried to do the best with what they had. Michael Hall, D tackle, is going to be a decent pick. You add some youth to that D tackle position. Michael Hall a lot of people loved Michael Hall. I didn't see the explosion off the snap or a big-time playmaker at that position at Ohio State. there were spurts and there was moments where you saw him making a big impact in the games, but I didn't see enough for me to kind of rank him up there with some of the other top end of the D tackles. But Cleveland loves him, and they drafted him as such. So good for them. We'll see how he develops in Cleveland. Other than that, one of my favorite picks is Zach Zinter, the Michigan guard. Being able to get him at pick 85 due to injury, had a major leg injury this season. Wasn't able to continue throughout the year and help his Wolverines win a championship. But what he did is slide just a little bit in the draft to where someone could get some super value on him. Definitely is going to end up being a starter for the Cleveland Browns. I love this pick. As soon as he gets healthy, he's plug and play for me. Other than that, again, they didn't have a lot of picks, so they had to go with what was working for them.
All right, next up we got the Dallas Cowboys. And Cowboys, again, we weren't sure if they're going to go for that flashy pick,
right.
What were they going to do? But
wide receiver.
They actually went and faced a need that they really did need because of the fact that they get age and injuries on the offensive line. So they go to offensive line here with Tyler Guyton. We got Mike Tackett in the house.
Yes.
What does he got to say here, Joe?
Said watched Mike Hall at Ohio State every weekend. When he's good, but he's too inconsistent, taking too many plays off. So that kind of matches up with what I was seeing. Is like there's some parts of his game where you're like, oh man, he really kind of broke through that offensive line and stopped the running back. And then there's other plays where it's like, where is he? He's not making any impact. So I think that's kind of like that goes to that inconsistent play like Mike was alluding to. So that confirms the whole analysis of him. With the Cowboys, I'm not so hot on Tyler Guyton. I wasn't really excited about him coming out of Oklahoma. He's a little raw for my liking, and I'm not a huge fan of taking a draft pick, especially that high, bottom of the first round, wherever it would be. Even if he was picked in the mid of the first round, I think it's just too much. It's just too high. I don't think the value's there for Guyton. Yes, he could develop. Maybe he could be a starter. Maybe. But to me, I just see a player that's a little lazy at the combine. I didn't see any twitchiness from his body type. I didn't see any intensity, and it kind of bothered me. And even in the interview process, you hear this guy talk, and it makes me wonder, like, is he all in? Is he all about football? Is he going to definitely have the work ethic to be great at the next level? So I had a lot of question marks with him. My favorite pick, though, was Western Michigan DN Marshawn Kneeland. I think that guy is going to develop extremely well, going to be a menace at the next level. Maybe not right away because DeMarc Lawrence is still there, Micah Parsons is still there, but maybe Lawrence's replacement. DeMarcus Lawrence really hasn't been productive at all. He's making a large sum of money right now, and Kneeland, this could be a cheap option that they could just kind of insert, move on from the contract if they can get out of it right now, and just continue that defensive rush.
Yeah, and that's one of the points we brought up during the draft when we were covering it, Joe. Again, is that an option? They were going to go with the first pick.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how everything pans out with them. We know now, too, that Zeke is now reunited, and they're all happy now, and it's good to see his buddies again. Of course you are, because you didn't have a job before, so...
he's got a different number now, too, everybody.
Number 15. So now everybody, what the big speculation is, they're like, oh, so you're saying there's a chance we're going to get Stephon Gilmore back, and have the 21. This is how desperate these Cowboys fans are, Joe.
My thing is why?
I do not know.
You look at their roster. You don't need a corner.
Yeah.
You don't need old man Gilmore to come back. You got Bland on one side. You got Diggs coming back off of that injury last year. You're set.
Yeah.
You're set. You already have your nickel corner. Gilmore's not playing nickel for you.
Right.
So what are we talking about, Dallas?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're on to the Broncos.
On to the Broncos. Giddy up. Here we go, the Broncos. And again, they were part of the grabbing a quarterback at the end, too. Again, we weren't sure what we were going to see out of the Broncos here.
I'm pretty sure it was quarterback the whole time.
Yeah, I thought when we were talking again, too, I mean, we just weren't sure because there was a lot of different options. And Bo Nix is their guy, though, the guy that they went to. I mean, I think if there's anyone that can kind of fix the issues that I have with Bo Nix, it would probably have to be Sean Payton, though, I guess. So,
Well, what it is Bo Nix fits the scheme. He fits Sean Payton's scheme to a T. This is the kind of quarterback that Sean Payton needs to work with. A guy that is all about efficiency, timing, quick release, just doing what it needs to be done. He's kind of like a game manager in that aspect, but man, is he accurate with short to intermediate passes. The deep ball, I think it's, as I did more homework on Nix, early on I was like, this guy just can't throw deep. He's just terrible. But then I'm starting to watch things, and we've seen it in the past where quarterbacks come in, they might not have the strongest arm, but they compensate for it. They throw it earlier, where it's not going to be a 60-yard bomb. Instead, it's going to be a 40-yard bomb. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to end up working out just fine with Denver and Sean Payton. This is the guy that they wanted the whole time. There's no doubt about it in my mind. They were just hoping that he would fall to them, and he did. So for Bo Nix, I think it's a great fit. I think it's the best pick that Denver could make because they didn't even have a second rounder. So it's like this was the spot they had to take quarterback and not risk it. So other than that, you look at the rest of their draft. I'm not a huge fan of Troy Franklin. I know there's a lot of people out there that love this kid. And he does have traits that you like at the next level. He does have speed. He's got height. He's got that wingspan and everything that you talk about. But for me, he's got a little too inconsistent hands in catching the ball. And that's going to bother the hell out of me because if you're a receiver, you got to catch the ball. You got to be consistent with that. So could he develop into something special? Sure, just like anybody can. But I'm just not super excited about him at the next level.
All right, next let's move on to the Detroit Lions here, Joe. The Lions representing there, and how about the Detroit crowd showing up too?
Detroit?
Joe? There were people everywhere at that draft. It was like the whole street, like the whole city was just plugged up with people. It was just amazing.
And they broke a record.
Yeah.
They broke a record for most attending the draft. It was absolutely insane. So let's see the next city if they're going to be able to conquer that, because that's going to be the thing now, right? Is like every city from now on is going to try to break the record now with more people. But yeah, a lot of people said, like, I know the location. Some people had a little apprehension of it. Didn't maybe because of the stigma about Detroit, of it being like a really rough city, crime ridden, that type of deal. But man, people really came out. They had a lot of fun. There wasn't really, you didn't hear too many negatives about it. And it was a huge success for the NFL this time around.
Yeah, and again, Terry and Arnold right there. Again, we weren't sure too. There was a few different teams here. We're like, oh, this is going to go here. Is going to go there?
Right.
And there it is. The Lions are right there to grab him.
Yeah.
But I know you're not too keen on the second round pick on that for these guys.
Yeah, I'm not excited about Enos Rakestraw Jr. I don't see what everybody else is looking at. So there was a lot of so-called experts, scouts, and all that. Not NFL caliber, because we don't get to talk to those guys too often, but just guys in general on YouTube and whatever, and they do their homework and they do it well. But a lot of people really liked him. I just didn't really think that he's going to work out well at the next level. He's got terrible tackling issues. That's got to be addressed. And I know we've heard from Roderick David about how he said, I don't care about if a corner can tackle. I need him to cover.
Yeah,
I get that. But at the same time, you need to also chip in and help, especially on run plays on the outside and whatnot. So I think he's going to struggle in that area. Not just making a tackle on the running back, but also getting off the block. Like, I think he's going to struggle in that area. And then when it comes to coverage, I just feel like he's a little too physical at the next level, much like a Joey Porter was, where you even saw it in games where he was getting pass interference penalties and holding penalties and whatnot. I think Rakestraw is going to kind of have that same issue in the NFL.
All right, next I'm moving to the Green Bay Packers here, Joe. What did you think about their draft picks and what they grabbed?
They had a crap ton of picks. They were loaded with draft picks, so it's kind of hard to be like, well, we have this many picks, and we still bombed the draft. They had plenty of opportunity to grab talent, and they did for the most part. Like, when you look at, I'm not excited about the first pick they took, Jordan Morgan. He's definitely going to kick in at guard because he has those short limbs, and I think that's going to be a problem at the next level. I know it isn't for everybody. Jordan Morgan is a gifted offensive lineman. He is a tactician. He's definitely locked in and knows how to play the position extremely well. It's just with those short limbs at the next level, when you have all these guys with vines for arms, with D tackles that are going to be able to keep your hands off of their body, he might struggle a little bit. So that's my only kind of knock, really, on their draft. I just don't agree with that pick. But other than that, they came with huge value. Javon Bullard, safety from Georgia. Edrin Cooper, linebacker from Texas A&M. USC running back, one of my favorite running backs, Marshawn Lloyd. And they had plenty of depth after that, guys that are going to try to develop to be something and make the roster. So overall, I think they did a good job. They got a cluster of draft picks that could turn out to be good starters for them. And it's a very young team. So it's almost like all of these picks, you could argue, are luxury picks at this point. They didn't have necessarily a ton of needs, but they're able to get these caliber players where they were at, especially in the top half of the draft with all these picks. That I think they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, like you said, kind of fill those little gaps that they did have. I know they needed free safety. They just grabbed Xavier McKinney, from the Giants as a free agent, so they didn't need to have that. So, like you said, if you look at everything else, they already still have, Quay Walker. No. So, fill their gaps with decent value here. But again, like you said, if you the number one draft pick overall to help that left side of Jordan Love, if it doesn't work out for you,
I don't know if he's going to work out.
It's gonna
I'm a little concerned about him, Morgan there. But like the safety, Bullard doesn't have to start right away, but he might. Yeah, he could be that good.
Got him starting in there, but we'll see. We should see when the smoke clears. All right, next we've got the Houston Texans again, Joe. The Texans, again, a good team from last year, go from worst to first. They grab Kamari Lassiter, Georgia DB, and filling some more gaps here and looking to carry on with what they did last year.
Yeah, and you're starting to see a trend, especially in this draft. This class was so deep in varying positions that every team had a good draft. There wasn't one team. There might have been one or maybe two teams that should have had a better draft than they did. But overall, everybody did well. No, there was no big head scratchers in terms of value or just completely missing the opportunity to get some of these draft picks. But Houston, again, another team that they didn't grab. How should I say this? They didn't have like huge names.
Right.
Coming out of college, but these guys are all not just extremely solid players, but guys that could develop to be a starter. When you look at Kamari Lassiter, like you brought up, guy isn't the fastest, doesn't have the top end speed that most people do, but what he does is have huge IQ at the football level. This kid is super smart. He's like a linebacker, a corner, where he can read and react. He can see the play before it happens and get himself into the spot to make a play. And that's the beauty of Lassiter. Not the fastest guy, but a guy that can just instinctively get to where he needs to be and make a play on the ball. Notre Dame tackle Blake Fisher, I think this possibly could be the steal for their draft because Blake Fisher, had he come out a year ago, he was going to be or even I should say this, if he stayed another year, next draft, he could be talked about in the top 5 of tackles for next draft, but he chose to come out a year early. So they could have themselves a stud first-round talent, at the 59th pick. But other than that, you go through the rest of their draft, it's solid all the way through. They grabbed value, and this is another successful draft for the Texans.
Yeah, and again, and I even like the fact getting Cade Stover, a guy who used to play with C.J. Stroud here too, now to be on the opposite side of Dalton Schultz. So now you're looking at Schultz, and so now you're thinking even 2 to 10 end sets or something. It's another guy that he trusts to go to. So it helps with some more familiarity with your quarterback.
The funny part of Cade Stover is the fact that he used to play linebacker. Everybody, he played multiple positions for Ohio State before deciding to play tight end his last year. Which if that's not a team player, right? I mean, I don't know what is. Guy that's willing to do literally anything for your club. So that's what you're getting in Cade Stover. Guy that's a hard worker. He's got that linebacker mentality, and he loves just to punch people in the face.
There you go. All right, next up, we've got the Indianapolis Colts, Joe. The Colts.
I mean, the Colts here, they grab a guy in the first round at 15th overall, which I think the Colts were banking on Brock Bowers to be here for them because I think that's really who they wanted in the first round. But then when that didn't come to fruition, they decided to go with their pass rusher to team him up with Kwity Paye. Latu is, or I should say, could be the best pass rusher out of this draft. But, man, he's got a neck injury that he just got over. There was a lot of concerns around the league about this kid. Like, how long is he going to be able to play? We don't want to draft a player. Maybe potentially it could be, a catastrophic injury if it reoccurs. Does he get paralyzed? That type of thing. Like, it's a real dangerous kind of line that people walk when it comes to that kind of injury. So the Colts they must have checked with their team doctors, had all the confidence in the world that he's not only fully recovered, but is healthy enough to continue playing football, and they end up making selection. I hope the kid works out. I hope he stays healthy his whole career. But again, kind of a risk. I hope it all works out in the end. Other than that, I wasn't too keen on Adonai Mitchell, the receiver they got. They needed receiver, but they got him with the 52nd pick. He's just one of those guys where, like, has tremendous explosion, could be a steal. He could be. But my only apprehension to that is the fact that I didn't see consistent play. We talk about a player earlier in this draft that, sometimes he made plays like Mike Hall. Sometimes he makes plays, and sometimes it looks like he's checked out. That's how kind of Adonai Mitchell is. He's got gifted speed, elusiveness, and all that. But sometimes you're like, why didn't he finish the route? How did he drop that football? Like, he was wide open by himself, and so it could be a focus issue, like we talked about with Jermaine Burton earlier. So kind of the similar type of issue.
All right, next up, now we got the Jacksonville Jaguars, Joe.
Yeah, Jaguars. Their draft kind of perplexed me a little bit. They went with 3 LSU players, okay, two tackles, 2 D tackles, 1 wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr., and then everybody else is like, I love Javon Foster from Missouri, offensive tackle. I think he could develop to be a starter. But when we talk about every single pick that they took, it's all hit or miss. These picks are all hit or miss. They could be boom or bust type picks. And that's kind of like a little concerning. This is the second year that the Jaguars have done this style of draft where they're taking players that they could be amazing or they could be out of the NFL in 3 years. So a lot of risk here with their draft. I know they're hoping that they pan out more than they lose. But, man, a little concerning and some question marks throughout their selections. Now we got Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl Kansas City Chiefs. They go and we kind of alluded to it earlier in the show. Xavier Worthy, speed demon himself, broke the 40-time record at the scouting combine, running a 4.21. Good Lord, that is fast. But then again, he's coming into the NFL at 165-ish. Very extremely light. Literally, I think any corner in this league could just stiff arm him one-handed, and he's not going nowhere. He's not the strongest guy. He's extremely light. He's going to get pushed around, especially against these physical corners that are going to kind of bump him around and try to throw him off his route. It's going to be interesting to see how Kansas City utilizes him at the next level. I think Andy Reid's got something in mind and trying to get him with free releases and in motions and maybe even some receiver, just quick receiver outs just to get him the ball and turn up the field. So it's going to be interesting, but to say the least, that kind of is the big, the big exclamation point, if you will, for Kansas City in this draft. Other than that, everybody else is all developmental. All the other picks are developmental. I know they took the tackle out of BYU, the Kingsley Suamatea. Has potential to start, but, man, are you really going to throw him out there to the Wolves week 1 when he's just not ready yet? Even as a college prospect, he's not as solid and ready. He's a little bit raw, needs to be taught. So he might struggle in his first year a little bit, but I think he'll kind of hone things in as the season goes. But other than that, like Kansas City, what does Kansas City really need? I mean, they won the Super Bowl, and they didn't really lose anybody.
Yeah.
So they're going to be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So next, let's move on to your Las Vegas Raiders, Joe. There it is. Brock Bowers was there for them. Tight end. They go and get him. And then also you on the second day too, you also like Jackson Powers Johnson too. So that was the guy you were, really high on.
Oh,
too.
super excited.
And so is even going to go in the first round a couple times because again we brought up his name in conversation here, and he ended up falling right to your team. So how blessed is that for you?
In the second round, everybody was expecting this kid to be gone in the first round. Yeah, he wasn't going to be in the top half of the draft or anything, but man, these teams that could have utilized maybe some extra protection up front in the inside. I mean, I thought for sure like maybe Seattle was in play for that pick. I thought that even if you wanted to shore up the Buffalo Bills, I mean there was teams that could have taken him, and they didn't because they just kind of went with the value. The way that's what was happening. Everybody was starting to question, well, why is this player sliding? Why is that player sliding? But really, what it was is because this draft has never had such depth in terms of value that it was insane. Where people couldn't imagine a guy like Jackson Powers Johnson slipping to the second round, and he did. So a team like the Raiders were able to capitalize on that. So same thing with Brock Bowers. Everybody kind of thought he was like a top 3, top 5 type of talent, but for him to slide to the Raiders, they said, "Hey, we need tackle. The tackle that we like is here, but man, getting a talent like this." We're going to go with that. We're going to go with the higher end, BPA, best player available pick here. So that's what they ended up doing. After that, I think the third round pick was a little concerning to me. DJ Glaze, I know some teams were high on him, other teams weren't. But I guess that's going to be one of those picks where you have to wait and see if he actually ends up being a starter because you took him in the third round. Now, you take a guy in the third round, you're expecting him to maybe not be a starter right away, but eventually be that starter. So that's going to be an evaluation type pick. Other than that, they ended up getting needs, and they ended up getting like a little bit more value later in the draft. I think their day 3 picks were better than their day 2 picks. So,
all right, next let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers. Joe Alt right there, offensive tackle there, was there for him. Great for them to help secure the offensive line and help protect Justin Herbert. And then also I like the second pick that they end up getting at pick number 34 in Ladd McConkey here too. A nice, wide receiver, which they, again, Mike Williams gone, Keenan Allen gone. So they needed somebody. This guy, I like his yards after catch ability with the moves that he has and the route running. I saw a couple of different routes where his just that little cut and throws the DB right off, and then he is open. And that's what I like. There
was probably 3 wide receivers that run routes like Ladd McConkey, all kind of the same build with quickness and everything. Ladd McConkey was seen as one of the guys that had the best route running ability, arguably between a few of the receivers out there.
Yep.
But I think it's a great pick. Joe Alt, obviously. I mean, they weren't going to pass up Joe Alt. Like I know some people were like, oh, well, maybe they go Bowers, maybe they go wide receiver. But man, by shoring up your offensive line, now you can safely say that there is no hole on up front for them. So great job by them. My favorite pick was actually Junior Colson, Michigan linebacker. They end up getting it with the 69th pick. I thought it was tremendous value for him. That guy's going to be a plug and play type starter for them. And another one I really love is Brendan Rice that they got way down in the draft, which I didn't expect him to be there with the 7th round pick here, one of 2 of them. But they got themselves, I think, a good receiver that's going to probably end up starting right now. Like, the value is tremendous. Guy runs great routes. He's got good hands. Like, obviously his father taught him well, right? Jerry Rice. But I think the value there is so good. He's going to end up being a starter. And then they also got in rotation Kamani Vidal, one of my favorite running backs.
Yeah, and the memes are just flying about Joe Alt and his pullover and everything. I think that stuff's hilarious. But hey, you hope so for the Chargers again, because that's the one thing they have been having with injuries at the offensive line, issues there. Right. So they would love to have them a nice tackle for them. So next we've got the Los Angeles Rams, and again the Rams were one of those teams last year that really kind of threw me off, because it started off kind of really not very good, injuries, but then also just thought they're going to take a step back a little bit, in which they did, but then all of a sudden really turned it on and really showed some stuff. But now in the draft here, they go get Jared Verse here, DN, and then also Braden Fisk here as their tackle here to replace your Aaron Donald. But my guy Blake Corum here as a running back too, and we've seen them kind of feature some of these running backs as of late in there. So I'm interested to see how much of an importance in this offense he's going to be under the Sean McVay offense.
With Kieran Williams, he's going to be the backup. He's going to be a rotational piece for the Rams, and it's a pretty nice rotational piece to have in Blake Corum. A guy that a lot of people envision him being the number 1 running back. Some people had him at least in the top 3. But again, another value pick for the Rams, something that they've highly valued, obviously taking the running back at 83. But going back to that defensive line, they needed to rebuild it. Braden Fisk is by no means anywhere close to Aaron Donald. I wonder if they're going to utilize him as a D end in their scheme. They run a 3-4, so I expect him to play more of like a D end. He's not going to be a true nose for them. And Jared Verse, he's going to play the other D end spot. Guy is gifted. He's got power. Only thing you got to work with him is pass rush moves. That's it. This guy's got everything else, size, acceleration off the snap, power, so that's really the only thing holding up the rest of his game. But again, kudos to the Rams. They did a really good job with their first 3 picks. After that, they kind of went with guys that they felt like they could develop possibly into starters. But again, we're going to have to wait and see how that all passes out or ends up. Because Cameron Kitchens, when they took him with their 4th pick, I wasn't super excited about the kid. I know some people are about his ability, but I just saw some inconsistencies with tackling, with being where he needed to be in terms of coverage. So hopefully the Rams can bring out the best in him.
All right, next we've got the Miami Dolphins here, Joe. And I don't think you were very excited about Chop Robinson here for the first pick for them.
Oh, Chop Robinson, to me, I didn't see enough on tape of him actually disengaging from blocks. When it came to running plays, he struggled because as soon as the offensive lineman got on him or a tight end got on him, he just couldn't disengage. And at the next level, you're facing the best of the best. You better be able to do so. And then when it comes to pass rushing, at the college level, he was just able to run around guys. Like if anybody remembers a guy by the name of Vic Beasley, this is Vic Beasley to me 2.0. This is the guy that has the super acceleration, super top-end speed, a guy that can literally just beat you around the corner if you let him. And I think at the next level where you're facing way better talent in tackles every single week, that he's not going to be able to do that quite often. So I know the Dolphins kind of have this stigma about just drafting speed, and it stays true here with Chop Robinson. Now, hopefully they can find some ways to kind of get him some free blitzes off the edge or between the tackles or something like that. But I think that he may struggle a little bit, especially early on. Hopefully he can develop past that. But other than that, I think they did well with the rest of their picks. Like, again, the mantra for Miami is speed, speed, speed. They go with Jalen Wright, one of the faster running backs, one of the more elusive running backs. They go with Malik Washington, a very quick, agile wide receiver who's quick out of breaks, has top-end speed. And then at the very end, Taj Washington is another speedy wide receiver. So they kind of went with the idea, like, it seems like the last 2 drafts, they just went speed, speed, speed with a lot of their picks, and it reflects in this draft as well.
All right, next up we've got the Minnesota Vikings, and there's they were the talk of the draft too. What they were going to do if they had to move up or whatnot, and who were they going to grab? What quarterback was it? And it was J.J. McCarthy. No real big surprise about that though too is because again we were hearing stuff throughout the week, throughout the night, and there it is. They get J.J. McCarthy here to replace Kirk Cousins, and also Dallas Turner they were able to get here too. Again, you talked about where they were in their next spot. It was nice to have that kind of value there, right there too, and get this guy. But this team, I mean, with J.J. McCarthy, we talked about leadership and his ability and what else he has and his smarts. You talked about it with Roderick too as well on draft night. The fact that when they had showed him, when they interviewed him with showing the different blitzes and stuff, he was able to recognize a lot of those nuances, and that's big. That's next level stuff, and how they're gonna how it's going to pertain to your job in the NFL. And that's a big situation here for the Minnesota Vikings in a tough division right now. That's only getting better.
Yeah, J.J. Watt, like this was the guy they wanted the whole time. They did want Drake May, don't get me wrong. That was kind of like their number one. And they said, if we can pull off a trade with the Patriots, we're going to take Drake May. But it never came to happen. So they were like, okay, fine, we're going to sit and wait. And then they ended up pulling off a trade, which was interesting to me because they picked at 11, Denver picked at 12, and the Raiders picked at 13. But they decided to trade up one spot with the Jets to secure J.J. McCarthy. So it leads me to believe that either the Broncos or the Raiders were also talking to the Jets about trading up a couple spots to get ahead of Minnesota in order to take J.J. Would have been interesting to see that play out.
Yeah.
But something tells me that that's why they did the move, is because they were a little concerned that somebody else right behind them was gonna move up. So they secure him. They get J.J. That's their guy for the future. And like you mentioned, Dallas Turner, a gifted pass rusher, but needs to work on some things at the next level to become the best of his ability. Kyrie Jackson, I really like that pick at 108, the corner, long, 6'4", tall corner, like very aggressive too in man-to-man. So I think that's going to fit well with their defense. And other than that, they grab guys a little bit later in terms of offensive line. A kicker got drafted, from Alabama, Will Ricard. A very accurate kicker. So we'll see how all the rest of the draft picks pan out. But overall, I think Minnesota did a great job.
All right, next we've got the New England Patriots. Again, like you just said, at number 3 overall, Drake May was the selection. Patriots fans rejoice. And again, we'll see how far their expectations go again, because it wasn't a nice road or a storyline even for their former quarterback they just had, who's now in Jacksonville. So again, like you said, I really like him. I think he has a pretty good ceiling here. If he's any bit of that guy he was 2 seasons ago, I think that's great. Again, just had a little bit of rough year last year. Work on some stuff, but I think he can work out here in New England.
The thing with Drake May is he needs to work on his footwork, his mechanics going forward, and that's going to lead to being even a better accurate passer too. I know he had to make some platform throws with North Carolina because the offensive line, let's just say it was shit.
Yep.
It was absolutely terrible. There was no protection for him. And on top of that, when you look at receiving weapons, they really weren't that great either. They had Tez Walker, who was his go-to guy, and he got drafted in this draft that got speed but inconsistent. But Drake May, that was his favorite target because he was the only target. So that whole offense struggled. And the fact that Drake May had to go through offensive coordinator, and still be able to make something out of nothing. So I think Drake May has a super high ceiling, could end up being the best quarterback, could be. But New England gets him at 3 and gets their answer for the future. Good for them. The rest of their draft, it's kind of like typical Patriots drafting. Not too much has changed. It seems like even without Bill Belichick as the GM, seems like they went with a lot of like value picks in terms of how they viewed him and schematically wise. So we'll see how it all pans out. But Drake May, I think, is going to be one of those great additions for them.
All right, Ty's in the house with us tonight, Joe.
What's going on, Ty? Welcome to the show, bro. He said Drake May had no wide receivers to throw to at UNC. So perfect fit with the Pats, no wide receivers unless the 2 rookies step up. And that's what's going to happen. It's like you got the rookies, and then you could still see them maybe add a Tyler Boyd, who's still out there in free agency, who's taking a couple visits right now, one to Tennessee, I believe, and then the other I think he already visited with, I can't quite remember. It might have been Kansas City. But there's free agents out there that they could add where it's not, they can add some veteran, leadership there in that department there. So I wouldn't say it's just a complete, issue there for them. They're going to be able to do some things that are going to help Drake May. One thing that I was kind of surprised is that they did go offensive line, but I thought they were going to go with the second pick and try to go offensive line there, but they didn't. So we'll see how it all pans out. I think Jalen Polk is a decent wide receiver, but we'll see how he works out at the NFL level. Mike Tackett goes, if Daniel Jones and Mitch Trubisky had a baby, it'd be Drake May. Mike is always on top of it.
I don't think so, but sure.
Mike is always on top of this.
Yep. All right. Yeah,
but
he's got his stuff.
I would say Sam Howell because Sam Howell and Drake May are like best friends. Sam Howell's been supporting him throughout this whole draft process, and it's been pretty cool to see that a former teammate, former UNC guy is there to have your back.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, Ty, he says the Pats are a slow rebuild, but the players understand that.
Yeah,
Right.
obviously, because when they decided to kind of tear everything down, they got a new regime in place. Yeah, it's a former player in Gerard Mayo, but at the same time, brand new coach, more of a modern coach, still defensive minded, but a guy that's not against the idea of having a more modern offense. And then new front office, no more Bill Belichick at GM making these picks. It's a whole new feel for New England. It'll be interesting to see how far they go away from their traditional views and ways of doing running the organization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Next, we got the New Orleans Saints, Joe. Saints, take it away.
Saints, they killed it. I mean, what I can't believe is that, one, Fuaga was there for the Raiders. I thought that would have been the pick. But for them to not go to Lisi Fuaga falls into the Saints' hands. I think what the Saints really wanted to happen is actually have Olu Fashanu slip to them. The Jets ended up taking him earlier, and they missed out on a true left tackle that they could have plug and played for this franchise. Instead, they go with Fuaga, who Fuaga, in my eyes, is no way at all going to play left tackle for you. He's going to play right tackle for you. So that being said, you got Ryan Ramczyk, who is on the verge of retiring. No decision has been officially made yet, but I think this is kind of like a little nudge to Ryan and be like, hey, go ahead, you can retire. We're good. We got Fuaga that's going to take your place anyway. So that might accelerate things a little bit there. But other than that, they get a first-round talented corner in Kool-Aid McKinstry to pair him up with Marshawn Lattimore. That's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer Rattler pick kind of confused me a little bit. I was surprised they went with quarterback, knowing that they drafted the Tennessee kid 2 years ago who came off a major injury, was getting healthy, now a backup to Derek Carr, and you drafted yet another quarterback to develop to possibly be another starter. So really don't think the need, even though the value was there, I'm a little confused with that pick for the New Orleans Saints, unless they plan on moving on from Carr. That would be the only reason why it would make any sense to me. But we've seen teams do weird things anyway.
Yes.
They do get a little bit of a sleeper in Bob Means, wide receiver from Pitt.
Yep.
Really like that. So overall, I think they just went with tremendous value pick after value pick all the way through the draft. They had another great draft as well.
All right, next, let's move on to my New York Football Giants, Joe. I was ecstatic, at least even from the first couple picks here. Absolutely. And yeah, Malik Neighbors. Again, we finally got like a wide receiver, seems like. I'm like, here we go. Yeah.
A legit number one.
Yeah, and this is the thing to knock again. So now, no matter what Mike Tackett says and some of these other guys, I think this is the year, as long as Daniel Jones stays healthy, because again, he's another guy that's been having the nagging neck injuries and stuff. So that's part of it, getting the neck injuries, and then the inconsistent wide receiver play and the offensive coordinator, again, just too many deep routes. We've already talked about it a bunch of different times. But now he's got a guy that I think he could probably work with and get some faith with and to go to. You know what I mean? And then on top of it, the safety, Nubin, again, stud, and Andrew Phillips, again, I think I like that one too at the corner. It's better than getting these rehashes that we've been kind of getting to fill voids here and there. Like I even liked Logan when we had him for a little bit and he was able to play two different positions. But again, I'm done with the rehashes. I want to try something new, and let's see what these guys can do here.
Yeah, the thing with Neighbors is we mentioned about if Daniel Jones can't do anything this year. I mean, the writing's already on the wall anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've already seen the Giants were trying to trade up to get Drake May 2 at 3.
Mm-hmm.
So just by having all those phone calls and everything, Daniel Jones is on his way out. It's just a matter of time. They are going to find their next quarterback, whether it be this upcoming draft or maybe the next draft after that. So I think the Giants have already made that decision to move on from Daniel Jones. They're just going to hold on to him. And if this doesn't work out for Jones in terms of having a true number one, a guy that's really going to scare some defenses and how they're going to have to try to defend against him, it's going to open some things up. It's going to open up your running game. It's going to open up the ability to attack downfield. And he's never had a weapon like this. So it'll be interesting to see how well he connects with them. The chemistry is going to be built up there. Andrew Phillips is one of my favorite choices that the Giants made. A guy that can play nickel or outside corner, a guy that is a pretty sticky in coverage. I think this is an excellent draft pick there. And then throughout the rest of the draft, they did a good job in terms of value. Grabbing Theo Johnson, a developmental starter tight end who's you can't teach size. The guy's 6'6", over 250, and runs a 4.6. It's uncanny. Only problem is he looks stiff as a tree when he runs, but they got to try to somehow loosen his hips, somehow get him to be a little bit more flexible so he can be able to make better cuts in route running. If they are able to do that, they got themselves a steal here. And Tyron Tracy, we talked about him before. About 3 years wide receiver. Then he converts to running back his last year. So you got some interesting versatility there for Tracy. It's going to be probably your best running back to run wide receiver routes you've ever had.
That's why I'm hoping.
Because he's a wide receiver.
Yes.
So he's still learning the running back game. At the next level, you get better coaching. So they're going to coach him up to be the best player he can
That's
be.
why I'm hoping just to get him in some of those different types of plays. Mike Tackett says Kool-Aid McKinstry is a nice pickup in the second and will complement Lattimore nicely, like you said. And did the Giants pick best player available or team need? I would say a little of both, but I say team needs definitely because they filled every single need. Like, what do they need? Wide receivers, safety, yes. They just got rid of one. Boom, corner, yes, they definitely need corner. Tight end, yeah, absolutely, especially with, you're not sure with Darren Waller, that whole business too on top of that, and who have they really even had that's a real stud. And running back, needed another running back, we'll see, because again, we definitely don't trust in, Singletary to do stuff on his own either.
I hope not.
I don't. I definitely didn't.
Not.
When I saw that again, I'm just like, oh, God, please.
The only problem that I have with this is that they didn't go with a different style running back. They went with a running back that, one, is still trying to learn the position, and two, isn't a physical back. So, yes, he's more physical than you would think by looking at him, but Devin Singletary isn't the most, he's elusive, but he goes down easy with arm tackles and things. He gets tripped up. Tracy, I feel like, can break the arm tackles, but again, he's not going to be a guy that moves the pile or run through anybody, anything like that. So I thought that they either free agency or the draft, they would have drafted a different style running back, maybe like a Marshawn Lloyd or something like that, but they didn't. But to Mike's point, I think they went just value. Every pick was a value pick. It didn't have to be a need, but it seemed like it ended up hitting every single aspect.
That's the aspect that he needed, yeah.
Go to the Jets.
The Jets. The
just
JTS,
talked about
Jets.
Olu
I have the
Fashanu.
old logo here. I'll have to bring up the newer one, the sleek 80s version.
Yeah, the Olu Fashanu pick is kind of what broke the back for the Saints, hoping that they could get him. The Jets, this was a great pick by them. I have to say that they planned ahead with this pick, knowing that they signed Tyron Smith from the Cowboys on a one-year deal, $20 million to play left tackle to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. But what are they going to do if the guy gets hurt? Because he's not the healthiest tackle anymore. He stayed, I think it was healthy for 13 games last season, so most of the season. But now what happens if it happens again, where he does have that bad back, gets hurt again, maybe even halfway through the year, but now you have a replacement, a plug-and-play player with Olu Fashanu that can take over at any given time, and they don't miss a beat there in protection. So thought that was a phenomenal pick for them. And then the rest of their draft, they even got a Jordan Travis later in the draft to be able to, he doesn't have to be rushed in right away. He's still recovering from an injury. He could develop behind Rodgers and get tutored by him to become the next starter for the Jets down the road. And they grabbed other guys that they could, as rotational players or guys that could possibly develop to be starters at a later point in time. Malachi Corley, I think, is an amazing weapon to add to this arsenal that they have. A guy that's like a joystick. We talk about Ladd McConkey, Roman Wilson, in that nature. This guy is going to be a special player at the next level as well.
All right. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, Joe.
Frickin' Philly.
Yep.
They do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Really does it
I
again.
just don't understand how this always happens for the Eagles. Howie Roseman, one of the best GMs ever. Like this guy, I don't know. It's like too easy for him. It just falls into his lap. Every draft so far I've watched, it's like, oh, they're going to take best player available because that's what they do. But guess what? Every time they take BPA, it ends up being a major need, and they capitalize on everything. Like, okay, they had two corners that were getting older that they're going to likely move on, whether it be this year, like they could be cut now, or maybe a year from now. But they get the number one corner out of the draft in Quinyon Mitchell, going to be locked down. And then later on, they get Cooper DeJean, who was supposed to be a first-round talent, who's going to come in and play right away. Like, that's the thing. And there was some negative feedback about DeJean. They're like, oh, what is he? Is he a corner? Is he outside corner? Is he a nickel corner? Is he a safety? Because he can play all those positions. But here's the kicker. Howie doesn't care. Howie's like, if he doesn't work out at corner, then he'll end up being my starting safety. We don't miss anything here. And then the rest of the freaking draft, it seemed like it just kept continuing, pick after pick. Jalix Hunt, pass rusher. Will Shipley, running back. Like, everybody high value at every pick. It just blew my mind. And I just don't understand how this happens every freaking year. You want to know why? I think I have a hypothesis about this. I think it's because Howie Roseman doesn't overthink the draft. I think it's like a common sense thing to him. He's like, okay, this is our board. These are all the guys with value. And if X guy is here, we're taking him. If Y guy's here, we're taking him. We're not going to overthink this thing. Hey, we have a need at freaking center. Do you think we should take Jackson Powers Johnson? No, we're good. We're going to take the best player available on our board and just continue to do so. And he just kills it every single year.
Yeah, I know, and it stinks because I have to deal with it every
gotta
single
deal
year.
with it.
Yeah. So
Two
it's
times
tough.
a year.
Yes, yes.
Every single
It's tough,
season.
and we get demolished. You know what I mean? That's the thing, and it's how embarrassing it is. You just get demolished, and like you said, fill in the two holes with those DBs right there, right away, and then the rest is just glory picks.
Value.
And again, and you also even have the option. You got Trotter, who again his father used to play. He was a former Eagle too as well.
Yeah.
So that there it is.
It's a
Keep
legacy pick.
the legacy pick. Yeah, I mean that's how ridiculous it is. And now it bodes the question: what do you do with James Bradbury now too? Does he slide down in the rankings here, or what do you do?
No, I cut him. I cut if I can. If I'm Howie Roseman, I'm cutting the contract if I can. If it makes financial sense, I'm cutting Slay and I'm cutting Bradbury. They're going to free agency. I got my two guys that can just start right away now.
Yep, and
cheaper.
Yeah, I was looking under 2025 in his contract. He has no guaranteed money there. So I mean, it would be a dead money hit of $10 million, and then
Now you got to see if it's post June or pre June.
that would be pre-June.
So if you do post, it changes
Post
things.
June. Let's see what post June is. Yeah, that knocks it down to, $3 million. So, do you take just that cap hit? You know,
Is it a cap hit or dead money?
it's dead money. And
Now,
the
what's the cap
The cap
savings?
savings is 4.7.
So you get 4.7 in cap savings and $3 million in dead money.
Yes.
Yeah, you're saving $1.5 million, and okay, $3 million is nothing for dead money. They'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you cut the guy.
Yeah.
You make him a
So there you
post
go, and
June
then
cut.
James
done.
Bradbury, that would help out in a lot of different spots. He could go somewhere as a free
He
agent.
will get a job elsewhere,
Mhm.
but again, it's not going to be with the Eagles.
That's not what we do with the Eagles. Yeah, exactly. All right, so he'd probably go to Washington or something, something like that.
He'd
Like
go
a
to
lot of times they
another.
go just
He'd
wherever.
go to another division rival,
yeah.
but not back to the Giants.
Exactly. All right, next we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, Joe. Again,
Before we get
drafts
there,
well too as well.
Before we go there,
Sure.
Mike Tackett chimed in. He goes, how does Philly keep stockpiling so many good picks? We'll see if it's enough to fix last year's devastating collapse at the end of the season. And here's my thing:
Yeah,
is
how about
I've
that?
kind of had this debate with other know-it-alls about. Well,
Hashtag
they didn't
know-it-alls.
have. They had a terrible defense last year. That's the argument. And like, what's different now? Like, I'll tell you what's different. Is they need a different defensive-minded player to call the plays, or not player, I should say coordinator, to call the plays. That was the problem. They lost one of their D coordinators, left, and then everything went blew up in their faces the following year. So they weren't able to find that right replacement at DC. And then it reflected, yes, they lost a few players, but they managed to get back CJ Gardner Johnson.
Yeah.
They managed to get him back, which was a huge loss.
Yeah.
They realized that. He ends up becoming a freaking free agent again from Detroit. I don't know why they didn't re-sign him. And boom, right back with Philly. So it's like they're going to get their guy, and it's good. They're starting to put together a great, highly talented, and extreme depth at that side of the ball, to where it's going to be difficult. I think as long as they iron out the whole wrinkles with the defensive play calling, they'll be just fine. They're going to return back to that star-studded defense that they had 2 seasons ago. So let's see how it all shakes out. Yeah, the talent galore. You're right, Mike. It's insane for him to stockpile talent on top of talent. But this is a great problem to have if you're the Eagles, to where you're like, oh, well, who's next for a contract? Because they just re-signed Devonta Smith, and now they're right now in the midst of re-signing to an extension A.J. Brown. So they seem to be handling everything extremely well, keeping this core together and adding talent on top of it. On to the Steelers. The Steelers are one of those teams, again, much like the Eagles, they hit on every pick with just high-end value, and it ended up also turning into needs. So Troy Fautanu, they desperately needed a tackle. Well, they got Broderick Jones a year ago. He's going to move to left tackle. Troy Fautanu is going to fit into right tackle. And then in their second pick, they grabbed their starting center in Zach Frazier, a guy that came off of an injury, slid a little bit in the draft, but now is going to be healthy and going to be ready to roll for this upcoming season. You just got 2 starter-worthy offensive linemen, back-to-back picks. Then you come back and get Roman Wilson, one of the best wide receivers in this receiving group, with your third pick. And, oh, yeah, a first-round talented linebacker, but he slid because of he's got a knee injury that could be an issue. If his knee injury checks all out, like Steelers obviously did their homework, if he can stay healthy, good God, their first 4 picks are all first-round talented starters. And even after that, guard Mason McCormick could also develop into a starter on top of it all. So Steelers are another team that absolutely slayed the draft, and they didn't overthink it. They just stuck with their board, talent-wise, and took BPA, best player available. And they didn't try to reach for nobody because of a positional weakness or anything.
All right,
Incredible.
Mike Tackett.
The moves Pittsburgh is making this offseason feel like they're setting up one hell of a postseason run within the next year or two. A Justin Fields reset will absolutely help his career, in Mike's opinion. And we call it a reset, and it could work out better for him. But what's interesting is that the Steelers are looking to extend Russell Wilson. Not so much Justin Fields, but Russell Wilson. And they've already declined the 5th-year option for Fields, which is very weird to me. Why did you trade for Fields, sign Wilson for dirt cheap, trade for Fields, and then decline his option if the whole goal wasn't to be like, all right, we're going to have Russell Wilson for 1 year, move on from Russell Wilson, and then start Fields after that? That's kind of like how I thought it sounded like what they were going to do, and it doesn't sound like that now. So if you're going to give Wilson an extension, you're not exercising the 5th-year option for Fields. Fields doesn't want to be a career backup at this point in his career. Are they looking at Fields as maybe trade capital for the following year, hoping they can drive up the value for Fields in preseason games and everything like that, and say if he's very successful during those games, then they can kind of make the argument like, hey, look what we got. We developed him to a higher level. He's still super young. He killed it in the preseason games. Who wants him? Come get him. You know what I mean? So that's an interesting situation in itself. So I don't know what they're thinking, but it doesn't seem for the quarterback room, it doesn't sound like it's as seamless as they present it to be. Mike Tomlin has said, oh, we have both quarterbacks. They love being here. Both quarterbacks, this, that. But you already gave the job to Russell Wilson. It's not like it's a competition.
Right.
Russell Wilson wouldn't have signed if he wasn't going to be the starter.
Right.
So what are we doing here? You declined the fifth-year option for Fields. What's the future look like there, Mike?
What's the future? Because it's very confusing because, again, if I'm them, I'm not sold on Russell Wilson at all. You know what I mean? And so that's why you do say, hey, I'm pulling the trigger and going to get Justin Fields because he's younger and you still see some of those flashes. You saw it with Chicago that he did have those moments where, all right, this guy might have something. You know, we'll just put him with better people around him, a better organization right now, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and set him up for success. And when you, like you said, decline the fifth-year option, it's a puzzler because it
doesn't make any sense.
You're going in. So yeah. So what's the point of it all?
So it's like, is it by week 7 you're going to trade him because you're not extending him? If you give Russell, if Russell Wilson gets that extension, you're not extending Fields.
No.
He's going to either be a free agent at the end of the year, or you're going to try to trade him before week 8 when injuries to quarterbacks might transpire. Maybe that's the thought process. But as of right now, none of that makes any sense at all, that whole situation.
Yeah, I hear you there, too. Let's move on to the San Francisco. We got the Seattle Seahawks first, actually, right?
I have 49ers on mine.
49ers. Yeah, 49ers on this one.
Yeah, 49ers. So all I got to say is Ricky freaking Parasol. One of my favorite wide receivers. This guy is going to be amazing for the Niners. This dude makes the most difficult catches you'll ever see. He runs phenomenal routes. He was one of the 3 I was alluding to earlier when we talked about Ladd McConkey. It's like this guy runs great routes. He's more of a physical wide receiver, too, at 6'1", 200 pounds. Like this guy, he can do everything extremely well. He will go over the middle and take a hit and still come down with the football. These are the type of wide receivers, these physical wide receivers that the Niners absolutely love. And by adding Ricky Parasol, which was interesting, 31st overall, what does that mean for Ayuk? What does that mean for Debo? We've heard rumors as the draft got closer that they were both on the trade block. They were both being considered to be traded away. Nothing ever happened, but now that they end up taking their first-round pick and Ricky Parasol, wide receiver, that come right in, could be a starter right away, could be at least a major factor. Now, does this mean like they're going to loosen up the reins a little bit and say, hey, Ayuk, go find a trade partner. Go find a team that wants to trade for you, and let's make this thing happen. They might be more apt to do that now that they have an answer on Ricky Parasol. Other than that, you look at the rest of their draft. I love their second pick, Renardo Green, cornerback. I think he's going to end up being a starter for them. Guy's super quick. He reads and reacts extremely well, closes in on the football super fast, and has great ball skills. So quick change of direction. You love all of that from Renardo Green. After that, they go with depth. They go with picks that are going to be developmental type guys, much like a lot of the other teams did. But Niners, once again, are a solid team as well for drafting.
All right, next we're moved on to the Seattle Seahawks here.
Yes,
and first overall for them, they grab Byron Murphy. So it's big for them. Again, going defense. This is what this team does. And when we talked about the Seahawks, it was cool to talk about this stuff with Engel. Because Scott Engel, because again, he's got that inside information, and as a writer for the Seahawks, and he was giving us all kinds of information what they do. And he was also saying the fact that too, John Schneider, he's different too from a lot of different GMs. You just don't know what he's doing. He's calculated, but a lot of times from the outside looking in, it's tough to figure out where he's going with this.
He values BPA above all else, but his board, I'll say, his talent board, whatever you want to call it, it's different than most people's. He looks for certain traits a little bit differently. He looks for a little bit more of a unique player that fits, not only just fits their scheme, but also talent-wise, what he values higher than maybe some other clubs. But again, this is something that everybody could see. Byron Murphy, I didn't think they were going to go this direction, but now that they've taken him, now you think about this Seattle team, and through the past years, they haven't had a stud D tackle like this in many, many years. So this dude is going to be a difference maker. And I mean, he was my number 1 D tackle coming out, and this guy is an absolute menace. He can do anything you ever need him to do. He can take on double teams. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. This dude's a powerhouse in the middle. Then they go into and getting Christian Haynes, who is another one of my favorite guards coming out. A very nasty, tenacious type of guard. Loves to finish people in the dirt and just flat out dominate. Plays almost a little bit past the whistle, so might have to hold him back a little bit sometimes. But again, John Schneider and Seattle Seahawks are another organization that doesn't overthink the process, that goes along with what they believe in, and they get value with their picks. The more intriguing thing, I think, for Seattle is the fact that after the draft, John Schneider does an amazing job of somehow finding these UDFAs after the draft, and they end up becoming maybe not a year later, maybe 2 years later, maybe 3, but then all of a sudden you'll hear a name pop up. Oh, he's the starter for Seattle now. And you're like, who's that? Oh, well, they signed him as an undrafted free agent 3 years ago. Now he's a starter. He does a great job of finding that very deep talent after the draft as well.
And finally, Joe, are we on to?
We're on Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they do what they should have done. We thought that they were going to go interior line. It's just at that portion of the draft, you really don't know who they like better than others. But they go with Duke center/guard, Graham Barton, a guy who may or may not struggle. He's a great offensive lineman, but he's another guy like a Jordan Morgan, has a little bit shorter arms, and I don't know how that's going to translate to the next level. But Tampa Bay has no questions about it. They go ahead and they take him with their 26th overall pick, and I really do like the pick. But I thought, for example, this is one of those examples, Jackson Powers Johnson. Like, they could have took Jackson Powers Johnson, lock him in at center, replacing Ryan Jensen, or at the very least, you could took him in, put him at guard. So that's a spot where I totally thought that could happen. Seattle was another one for JPJ, but they go with Graham Barton. And after that, I wasn't really thrilled with the rest of their draft. Not super excited about Chris Braswell. He's going to be a DN for the Buccaneers, but a guy that I see as more like, yeah, he's got length, he's got power, but he's a little stiff and lethargic moving, kind of. He doesn't really have great bend, so I don't know how well he's going to do at the next level. But another player that I really do like is Bucky Irving. They got later in the draft, a guy who's like a jitterbug running back who, in open space, good luck tackling him. That's all I'm going to say. He can change on a dime. He can stop. He can go, accelerate extremely fast. Like, this guy is going to be a problem at the next level, especially in the open field.
All right, let's move on now to the Tennessee Titans.
Not excited about J.C. Latham, their first pick. At 7th overall, I thought J.C. Latham, to me, in my eyes, is a guy that's going to play right tackle for you, or maybe even guard, kick into guard at the next level. He's a little slow. His feet are slow. So at the next level, if you're playing tackle, you can't be slow at all. You got to have quick lateral speed. You got to be able to move and step really quick, choppy steps. When you're facing speed rushers, going to be an issue. So they take him at 7 overall, and right tackle is not the weakness. It's the left tackle. So now Tennessee must be convinced that they can make J.C. Latham switch to left side, and he's going to be okay. I'm interested to see how that plans out. I think that's going to be a work in progress. And then to go back again, and in the with your second pick, you picked T'Vondre Sweat, who's got a ton of off-field issues. He got a DWI a week before the draft happens. Like, a lot of poor decision-making from that draft pick. So I would think, like, even though the talent level is kind of high, but, man, you got a lot of guys that have question marks coming in here, and developmental guys at that I think Sweat will be okay as long as you can get his weight under control and keep him, off of stop the off-field issues. But everybody else has got to develop. Everybody else has got to become something, to become a starter at the next level. Latham, to me, is the biggest question mark. Taking him 7 overall, I don't agree with it.
All right, and finally here now with the Washington Commanders here. Joe, they grabbed Jaden Daniels here, 2nd overall pick. Great pick for them. Again, fits the scheme. We talked about it before, Cliff Kingsbury and stuff.
Right.
So that was nice for them moving forward. And now, it looks like they do have that quarterback, that they've been looking for the last couple of years since they tried to grab Alex Smith and kind of get the guy that they needed before they had, when they had RG3 and Kirk Cousins both in the same house. Since then, there's been a bit of a drought. So let's hope Jaden Daniels can keep it together for these guys.
Jaden Daniels would have been my number one quarterback had he not have any of the weight issue. He's super light up top. Definitely needs to put on weight, and because he's got to withstand some of these hits that he's going to take. Guys landing on him, it's going to crush his soul. So for Jaden Daniels, yes, super elite. He can make all the throws. He's got uncanny mobility, much like a Lamar Jackson does. His acceleration is off the charts. So that's the part of the game that you absolutely love. Now, the other part is I'm concerned with his body type, how light he is up top. He needs to get stronger and bigger, more physical that way. I would have had him number one overall if that wasn't the issue. But because that's why he was number two for me. So Washington gets him. I think they got themselves a stud. This kid is going to work hard for them. He's going to make a difference for them. And then after that pick, you're thinking like, okay, they got the quarterback. So let's see how the rest of the draft goes. They got Adam Peters, former 49er front office assistant GM. Now he's the GM for the Washington Commanders. And he takes that same approach that the Niners do, is taking just value. So wherever you are, take the value. Jerzon Newton, a D tackle that was supposed to be taken in the first round, ends up going in the second round to Washington. In the third round, they go with Mike Sanderstill, who's probably the best nickel corner to ever come out the last 5 years in the draft class. And then you keep continuing and you're stacking more value after value. Jordan McGee at linebacker, Luke McCaffrey. Yep. Remember the last name McCaffrey? Yeah. Christian McCaffrey. That's his brother, Luke. And then Brandon Coleman, the offensive tackle from TCU. I think that's another good pick there. So overall, the Commanders did another fantastic job just taking value and taking what was there. Instead of worrying about pushing a need up over value, they actually had another really, really nice draft.
All right, so there it is. There's this year's recap of the 2024 NFL draft and what we liked and what we didn't like. Joe, it was an interesting one, and now we're ready to move forward for the offseason and see how these guys pan out and see what happens with these teams. And next we can kind of project maybe what these offenses will start to look like and how they improve. Right. How much will these teams improve? Some of the teams that didn't quite do so hot last year, how they can turn it around, and then some others that had missed the playoffs last year and see if they can get back in there by some of the moves that they've made. But Joe, before we get into this, why don't we tell everybody too where you can find this show?
Very simple. Head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button for us, hit that notification bell to let you guys know when we go live, and also comment, like, share. Share with everybody that you know that loves football, because that's what this is about. We're the best interactive NFL talk show out there, and we want to prove it to you guys. We do appreciate all our know-it-alls for chiming in with all the comments tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and it always usually is, because that's just what it is. It's a passion. Join in.
It's a passion. That's
right.
All right, so next we're going to go over, like we do, our 2021 NFL draft here. It's 3 years removed. So again, the notion that when they do these grades after the draft, I think is hilarious again, because it's all what you're thinking of your opinion at that point. But then after a couple of years in the NFL, you really start to see kind of what they tell you. That's the idea of where you could really gel and see what this player is at this point.
Right.
So we're going to do the review here, 3 years removed now from the 2021 draft. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Hit or miss, that's what it is. You guys play along with us. We got Mike Tackett in the house with us right now. What has he got here?
He said Las Vegas drafting Tommy Eichenberg is a great steal. All he did at Ohio State was produce. Very reminiscent of James Laurinaitis. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I think it's one of those things with Eichenberg is that he got like a stigma of like, oh, well, he's not that super athletic linebacker that we like in the modern era of football. He's not sideline to sideline, not super fast that way, a little stiff. He's shorter than what you would like. But, man, his football IQ and instincts are off the charts. He knows the play. Like, he's already predetermined and read your play just by looking at the formation, and he just attacks. He stops runners in the backfield more often than not. He's a phenomenal tackler. He's a very intense type of linebacker. Basically, what he is Robert Spillane 2.0 for Vegas. Vegas already has Spillane as their starter and had a phenomenal year last year, but now you get a younger version of Spillane. It's basically what he is. So I think he's going to do extremely well with that defense.
All right, here, let's take a look at the list here. Here's all 32 picks right here from that 2021 draft. And right here, let's go with 32 all the way to the end here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected linebacker Joe Tryon out of Washington, Joe.
Yeah. The thing with Tryon, though, that I found is like, okay, his rookie year didn't play much. He started 6 games. He had 17 games, but only started 6 of them, which was a little weird for me. Wasn't super productive. He had averaged about 4 to 5 sacks any given season. So you're being taken in the first round. Yes, he was a starter. That checks that box. But at the same time, the production for a pass rusher, you would like to see a little bit more. So I don't think he did enough to kind of give me the satisfaction of saying, oh, it's a definite hit. Now, it's not that he's a bad player,
right?
But to make it a hit as a first round pick, like I don't deem it as a success. So, and there's already talk about them possibly moving on from him already. So after his rookie deal is done, so that there on itself should tell you all you need to know. It seems like they're losing confidence in him, and he's going to be more of a bust for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Again, it's like he's got, averaging 3 to 5 sacks, per year or something like that. He's kind of that, in the middle type of guy, know, but nothing like you said. If you go in the first round, you got to kind of be able to make some production here for the team.
Not only as a start, you not only have to be a starter, but also you got to be pretty good. You know what I mean? At the next level.
Absolutely. All right, so here we go. Let's move on to the next one. We got the Baltimore Ravens, and they selected Jason Away from Penn State.
Yeah, this one I kind of questioned when the draft happened, and I'm just like, I get it. He kind of fits that Ravens defensive mentality, the pass rusher and all that. But again, another player that was a little unsatisfactory for me. A guy that came in, he doesn't have double-digit sacks. He's not crazy good. And honestly, he's been injured a little here and there. So I think first-round pick, just like we were talking about Tryon, I think the same thing happens with this guy. Like it's a bust for me with the Ravens.
All right, next here at number 30, we've got the Buffalo Bills and Gregory Rousseau out of Miami.
Oh, Greg. I was not a fan of Rousseau coming out. I didn't think he had the twitchiness that you would need as a pass rusher at the next level in the NFL. And again, another player that I'm disappointed in. I know the Bills were convinced when they drafted him, said this guy's going to be here for the next 10 years. But again, 5 sacks this past season, not good enough for me. And then before that, it's like your whole career you've had 17 sacks. Or, you know what I mean? When you look at the whole terms of his deal, he's going to be up to be re-signed or maybe even cut. I don't see enough tackling for me. There's not enough production for me. So I'm going to have to pass on this guy too. He's a bust.
Yeah, and I feel the same way again too. He's kind of that position. He's just a player there, you know what I mean? Kind of go through the thing. So it's not like he doesn't pull off enough of those highlights. When you talk about a guy and you bring up the Buffalo Bills again, I'm thinking Matt Milano, things like that.
Ed
guys,
Oliver.
Ed Oliver, things like that. Guys that come in and be able to make plays, or even say, hey, he is at least a good run stopper. He's making some plays here. Rousseau's just kind of is just there going through the motions. It seems for me.
Right.
Next, we move on to the Green Bay Packers and cornerback Eric Stokes out of Georgia.
Eric Stokes is an interesting player to me. I liked him coming out. I thought he was going to be a decent player for them, and he's been okay. But again, injuries piled up crazy on this guy. Hardly played. His rookie year, he played in 16 games, started 14 of them. That was like his most successful year. His rookie year, he had 14 passes defensed. It's insane, the production that he was putting out. But no tackles for loss. I mean, he had 55 tackles as a cornerback, which is not bad. But when it comes down to it, even though he played extremely well, after that rookie year in 22 and 23, it's almost like he disappeared off the face of the earth due to injuries. Only played in 9, started in 9 and 22, played in 3, started in 2 in 23, and it's like injuries. The best ability is availability, everybody, and this guy doesn't have it. He's not there enough. So I have to give this one another bust.
Yeah. Yep. I agree here too. And then moving on to the next pick, it's the New Orleans Saints and Peyton Turner. And you talk about a guy too that hasn't really played either. He's talking about 3 seasons. He's got 15 overall games, and last season only 2 games. So same thing. You're not seeing a whole lot of him just because he's not there. So I mean, so what's it? This has got to be just a miss on, at least on me too, altogether.
All I have to say about Peyton Turner is Peyton Turner who?
Yeah.
Like no one knows who Peyton Turner is. Do you guys know who Peyton Turner is? Nobody knows who he is. But guess what? He was drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
Just saying. So that just right there puts the cherry on the top.
Cherry on the top.
You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. All right, now the Baltimore Ravens have to pick again in this first round here, and they get Rashad Bateman here with this one from Minnesota. And for me, that's a tough one too, because I think he's good, and he's been good for them. That number one, like elite wide receiver, you kind of wanted with the with the Ravens here, that Lamar Jackson kind of needed. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they've kind of done that a lot of seasons. Multiple seasons in a row. The Ravens.
Yeah, single-digit touchdowns, and we all know the Ravens' offense isn't like a passing prowess or anything like that. But again, 1 touchdown in 21, 2 touchdowns in 22, 1 touchdown in 23. You're not lighting the lamp, buddy. And you go from your rookie year, which was your best year in terms of receiving yards, at 500. Anything in 22 and 23 is below that. You're talking 300, 200. Games played, he was injured a lot. In 21, you started 4 games. You played in 8 or played in 12. You started 5 games in 22 and played in 6. Like, again, this goes back to injuries and all that, and not a lot of production when you are healthy. So this is another bust. You took this guy in the first round, and still nothing. So you just didn't get enough out of him.
All right, next up for the Cleveland Browns, they had selected Greg Newsome, the first some cornerback here out of Northwestern.
I really liked Greg Newsome coming out. I thought that he was going to be a stud of a corner for them, and it's tricky for me because Greg Newsome recently is killing it. Yeah, this past year, like he had a really good year.
Yep.
But before that, it wasn't looking too hot. So, I mean, the one thing that I'll say is that if we go back to his rookie year, you look at his not very available in his rookie year. He basically kind of just a little over half the season, started 11, played in 12, 9 pass defense, which isn't bad for a rookie. Like played well. And then a year after that in 22, started 15, played in 15, and only had 6 passes defensed. And it's like a head scratcher. I think Cleveland was a little confused in his second year, and then you go into this past season, 14 passes defensed, but only started 13 games. So, I mean, the talent's there. You see it as of last year kind of splash onto the scene, but really, that's it. Like he had a couple of interceptions, but nothing like really to kind of go ooh ah about.
Right.
So he had 1 year of great production in this past year, but other than that, was banged up here and there his rookie and sophomore year. So I'm sorry. As much as I love this player, and I think his future may be brighter than now, I think you say bust for now with the opportunity to reinvent himself going forward.
Yeah, and if you look at even the sack numbers, they're still the same, despite even last year his the time they sent him out on a blitz was double digits 14 times, and he still only ended up getting there, for a half a sack.
Well, my point, my thing is about that is your corners shouldn't be blitzing.
No, I hear you, but that's what I mean. They upped it up. It was from the season, first season 2 times, then 9 times, then 14 times they sent him.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't.
Yeah, that's an issue if you're sending your corners to blitz. I'd rather send linebackers and DNs to scream off the edge, but whatever.
Well, that's how aggressive that defense was here last year.
Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. We've got the Jacksonville Jaguars and Travis Etienne from Clemson here. The first year, again, going down with the injury, but then coming back pretty strong here and a pretty good weapon here for the Jags.
Yeah, I got to say, he killed it. His rookie year was amazing. Over 1,100 rushing yards, just over 1,000 yards in 23. The 21 season, if you're like, hey, but why are you only reading stats for the first or the most recent 2 years? It's because the first year he didn't play at all. Yeah, he was out for the whole entire year. So, but man, he really kind of lit the lamp, so to speak. In 22, only had 5 touchdowns, but had double digits this past season. Great production, is a phenomenal receiver out of the backfield. He had over 300 yards in both years. I think this is going to be one of those dangerous type of players. Now, obviously, health is a thing for him. He needs to stay healthy. Last year, he was there for every single game, but in 22, missed a few games, started only 12 of them. If he can continue to stay healthy, this is not only a deadly weapon, and Jaguars are well aware of this, but this guy could be one of those guys that every defense has to worry about every single week. If he stays on the football field, watch out. This guy's just electric.
Mm-hmm. All right, next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers selected Najee Harris, and it was funny because in that whole that draft, they were just talking, Pittsburgh needs that running back, and I'm just thinking, they need offensive line. You know what I mean? What are you doing? I mean, Big Ben at the time.
O-line.
Was there getting crushed. And again, he wasn't the guy that he used to be. I mean, still that stature, he's bigger, but older and not as mobile, even with the injuries that he had.
Right.
To go running back, for some reason, it didn't make sense for me. But still, despite that, he's amassed some pretty good yards for them.
We talk about consistency. The last 3 years has played and started all 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Over 1,000 yards all 3 seasons.
Yeah.
7 touchdowns in 21 and 22 and 8 touchdowns this past season. This guy is just a physical back. We've seen him. He's one of the favorites, especially in even in fantasy football, to be taken. But this guy's just consistent all the time, is there all the time. So this guy to me this is a hit. This is definitely a hit.
Yeah, me too. Again, it's kind of funny too, because even a lot of times
a lot of negative talk about him
there's
too.
There's a lot
recently.
of negative talk. That's what I mean. And you see the other running back they had that's more like the ground and pound type of
Jalen,
guy. Jalen, what's his name? I can't remember.
I remember his first name.
Yeah, me too. But I just remember he's kind of like a bowling ball kind of guy. They're like,
shorter.
it seems like he's getting more yards per carry, so it seems like he's doing more. But that's what I mean. It's sneakily, you're like looking at Najee Harris, you're like, dude, he's just flat out consistent.
Hey.
If the Giants went out and got him, if all of a sudden they just did not believe in Najee Harris, I mean, I'd be ecstatic right now.
If the Steelers would like to get rid of him, I'm interested. I think the Raiders, I think the Giants would trade for him. We'd be fine with it.
Yeah, we definitely. If Steeler Nation is not happy, we'll gladly take it. So we know some hardships with some of that. All right, here we go. The Minnesota Vikings and Christian Darrisaw. It was Virginia Tech. I like Christian Darrisaw in here. A big pickup for the Vikings too. One of our fellow Godzilla Media personalities that was with us too. She went to Virginia Tech. Big on Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah, Darrisaw, I really liked his potential, in the NFL. I thought that coming into the draft, he was definitely one of the guys that everybody was kind of talking about of being a top tackle. Very solid. I mean, the guy's there. Rookie year, not so much. He He played in 12 games, started 10 of them, but then that increased in 22, 14 starts, 15 starts this past season. So he's readily more available now, which is a good thing, and very low on penalties. The one thing, and I think we've talked about this before with offensive linemen, there's not enough stats for them.
Yes.
Where I think it should come down to penalties, like every holding penalties. It should come down to false starts, all that type of thing. And then you got pancake blocks. You know what I mean? There's ways to where you can kind of create a stat field for offensive linemen to get a better idea of how good a lineman is, stat-wise anyway. But Darrisaw to me is a hit. Like, you got yourself a starting worthy tackle, and he's still there and getting it done.
All right, next up in the draft, we've got another Virginia Tech.
V-Tech.
Yeah, there you go. It is Caleb Fairley here for the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, damn it, Fairley. I just got to say that this guy broke my heart. I thought this guy was like, coming out of the draft, I had him as my number one corner. Like, I was so psyched about this kid and his potential at the next level. He has shut down corner attributes, but the injury problems is year after year. This guy doesn't get to play, and his body just can't hold up for some reason. It's something weird. It kind of just it deters the whole point of taking a guy like this, because can he get over the injury problems in college? That was the whole question mark. Is he's a gifted player when he's healthy, but he's just not on the field enough. And again, it stays true in the NFL now with Tennessee. Yeah. They liked his ability. They liked for him to come back healthy, and then maybe at the NFL with better trainers and better medical staff that he'd be able to get over the hump, but just still hasn't been able to do so. So to me, it's pretty easy a bust. Talent-wise, I think it's there. It's just we aren't able to see it.
Yeah, and like you said, right now, after year 3, if you ask fans who's Caleb Fairley, a lot of them don't know who the hell that is because he's not there.
No.
You know what I mean? And again, for somebody highly touted, again, if somebody that's big on your board, I remember when we were talking about it. That's what's funny. Talk about this draft here. A lot of it's coming back. You know what I mean? And for him to, I even forgot about him. Like, holy crap! Yeah, I haven't heard a damn thing, and that's the thing. You know what I mean? That's where you're drafted.
He doesn't play.
Yeah, you're drafted there for a reason. All right. So next we've got where are we at now? We're at Kwity Paye here for the Indianapolis Colts. They go and get Kwity Paye here out of Michigan. My guy.
Yeah, Kwity Paye was one of these players coming out from Michigan that was a lot of people were had skewed opinions on him. Some people were like, "Oh, he's not going to do much at the next level. He's quick and fast, but he's not stout enough to go up against these big tackles." But let me tell you, he's developed really nicely for the Colts. 6'3", a little shorter than some of these long-armed DNs at the next level, but 265. He put some definite muscle on that frame and was able to do a lot with it. He caused some crazy havoc in the backfield, stops runs, gets after the passer, and watch this. It's an ascending thing for him. So he's getting better every single year. From 21, had 4 sacks, then 6 sacks in 22, and then just recently 8.5. So he just keeps getting better. And now with the Colts having Kwity Paye, and then guess what? This year they got Laiatu Latu now on the other side. This could open up things for Paye even more, to where we might see him getting double-digit sacks, like 11 or 12 now, along with Laiatu they got to deal with on the other side. So I think this is a home run all day long. I was kind of excited for Kwity Paye through the draft process, but also I had my reservations too, because I kept listening to what everybody else was saying, and I'm like, if everybody's saying this, and this is what we keep hearing, like maybe it is a bigger issue, but I'm like, man, but the explosion, the acceleration off the snap, how strong he is. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that's true. So, and here Kwity Paye's lighting it up.
So it goes to show you, just sometimes you never know. Even the guys that do know, or they got the insight,
that's
they
right.
Still don't know. Mike Tackens here, he says 2021 is arguably one of the most overrated quarterback classes. Draft classes. All 10 quarterbacks
have a combined record of 67, 128, and 1 to this point. Okay, well, here's the thing. What I will say about that, Mike, is that it also has to do with like the situation that these guys are getting drafted into. If there's not an offensive line that can protect them right away, if there's no real weapons for them to throw to with whatever franchise that they go. So we're going to get to those picks, and then we can kind of evaluate it a little bit more and go over it a little bit more. But
yeah, and it's kind of funny because this draft was even kind of compared to another one. I want to say 2007 or 5 or something. I can't remember. I'd have to go and look at it again.
Yeah.
But they're trying to debate whether it was one of the worst or like overrated,
All time.
all time, out of
Something
some
like
of
that.
them. Especially with being overrated quarterbacks.
do you know how many drafts have taken place, guys?
Oh yeah, I know. That's what I mean. I'm like, for me to do all that research is crazy, but. I guess that's why I got William and Big John for now, maybe. Here we go. Next time, moving on to, sadly, my New York Giants. In this draft, again, when we're watching it at Joe's house,
Yeah.
Joe provided us with some excellent pizza and wings.
I
And it was
appreciate
amazing.
that.
Had some good drinks and some good times and good food. But I'm watching my New York Giants trade out of their spot
Yeah.
and go back. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, well, what's their thing?
Right,
What are
right.
they going to do?
Yeah, what-
All right, and then when it comes to this, they draft Kadarius Toney.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, what? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? This is not what I really wanted, what I
Right.
needed. And then I'm starting to look more on a Kadarius Toney. I'm like, okay, maybe I get this. He's shifty. He's got a little bit of this.
Yeah.
Maybe they can do this with him, jet sweeps, blah, 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 and this and this. I'm like, so I started to feel a little bit better about it, but definitely
Right.
not what I wanted. Because, again, we were talking about many things. This was the draft where we did our mock draft, and we had the Giants staying where they were,
Right.
which I can't remember even where it was now, but it was around where the Cowboys did. I think even the Cowboys traded up. Somewhere around there, something went down. I think maybe we traded with the
Was
Bears.
that
we
was-
traded with the Bears because the Bears jumped in right in front of the Cowboys. I think it was. I would think it was the Bears.
Who'd they take?
They grabbed Justin Fields. I think it was that. I just want to double check though. But the fact Micah Parsons was there, we picked Micah Parsons for the Giants.
Right. Now I remember.
And they trade
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you're like, why?
no, right?
Why?
And
Yeah.
they get Kadarius Toney.
Dude.
Look where Micah Parsons is now, ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen.
your rival, the Cowboys. How
and playing
awesome.
amazing. And what's
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney? He's a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that, but he's a loser, failed rapper. Guy,
loser.
bad attitude. Kansas City don't even want him on the
Well,
field.
here's the
even
thing.
too.
Like
Lining up off
this
sides.
this goes with the whole aspect that fans don't pay attention to, and you don't have the information because the media doesn't let it go out. Is character. This is the part where like, how crazy is this guy? You know what I mean? Is he a guy you could bring him home to the family to meet? You know what I mean? Like all these different characteristics, reviews that all these teams do. They do interviews. They try to get to know the player. This is one of those things where, like, in the interview process or something had to click where you're like,
Oh, retard alert.
I don't know if this is the right guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe we stay away from and now it's becoming clearer and clearer now that, it's hindsight's 2020, that we're seeing the true type of person that Kadarius Toney is. The dude is psycho. The guy's like not stable. And he's not a good team player. He's not a good locker room guy. So it's disrupting all these teams that end up taking him in, like Kansas City. And I think they're just done with this guy. He's not available either. It's not like he has.
Yeah, that's
he
the
has.
thing.
He has talent. There's no doubt about it. He's a very twitchy type of receiver. He's hard to bring down. He runs through tackles. He can make you miss. There's a lot to like there, talent wise, but everything else. Hell no, stay away. Move on, and it definitely got to be a bust through and through. Probably the most definite bust that we have in this draft.
Yeah, but definitely one of those. All right, next we've got the Washington football team right there in Jamin Davis out of Kentucky.
Yeah, Jamin Davis. I was a fan of his coming out of college. I wanted my Raiders to draft him actually, but now I'm kind of glad that they didn't, because he was available for most of the season. Rookie year, didn't really play much, missed pretty much half the season due to injury. It says that he played in 16 games, but only started 8 of them, and that was his rookie year. So you started to notice a trend there where he wasn't as an explosive linebacker that you were hoping he could be. The thing was that like they were saying he was one of the better coverage linebackers, but had to work in the run game. And I feel like that's where he really struggled a lot. His second year in the NFL had just over 100 tackles, which that's what you expect for a really good productive linebacker. But other than that, never got close to 100. And in terms of tackles for loss, did a pretty good job of it when they sent him on blitz. It had 9 in 22 and 8 in 23 this past season. So it to me, it's again, he's a decent player, but he's not worth where you took him in the first round. When you take a linebacker of all positions, you take a linebacker in the first round, he better be dominating. He better be like elite in some aspect. And Jamin Davis wasn't. So to me, it's a bust.
There you go. Next, moving on to the Miami Dolphins. They had selected Jalen Phillips here, defensive end out of Miami.
Jalen Phillips, it's a home run all day long. The guy's got production. The guy is good. Yes, he's missed a few games.
Yep,
He's missed some time and everything. But I think like when we saw Phillips go down with the injury this past season, how different did that defense look? Like, I understand they were struggling to find defensive end talent late in the season to add for their potential run and all that, but you saw that you saw them even in this draft. They go with Chop Robinson in the first round. They're like, we're not going to do that again. We want depth. We want guys that can come in and be contributors, and that's why you saw what you saw in this draft. So I think Phillips home run all day long, and you see that Miami recognized a weakness after him that they need to go and attack that position.
And again, like you said, just a bit of an injury, because even from his first season with the 8.5 sacks, that was even only starting 5 games. Into this season, he had 6.5, and he only started 6. And again, I think it was going to be his best season ever, and then just cut short. So you could see the progression in what he was doing and what he is to that defense.
Right on.
Right on. All right, then moving on. Here we go. What do we got? We've got the Las Vegas Raiders here. The offensive tackle. Here you go. Remember this one, Alex Leatherwood.
Everybody's favorite tackle coming out. Here's the funny part of this whole thing is Alex Leatherwood became an abysmal offensive lineman, was absolutely trash. But everybody loved him in this draft process. Everyone was like, oh, it's the safest pick of the draft. Whoever gets this guy, he's plug and play. You're going to have him for 10 years. No, we had him for 2. And he wasn't good at any point. And then I believe they traded him to Chicago. He goes to Chicago for a year, and they're like, oh, this is why they wanted to move on from this guy. And then I don't even think he's on a roster at this point anymore. Like, I think he might have moved around a little bit, but then he's probably done by now. Definite bust.
All right, here we go. Now we're getting to our top 16, Joe, of the 2021 draft. Here we are, the Sweet 16. Nice, I like it. The Arizona Cardinals selected Zaven Collins out of Tulsa.
Man, Zaven Collins. It's weird for Zaven Collins. When he got drafted, people were kind of confused how to use him. He was a linebacker at college, was kind of like a pass rusher, basically, off the edge. He had a lot of sacks in college, and that's kind of like what jumped him up the draft boards for this draft. Didn't play a lot his rookie year. He played in 17, but only started 6 of them. In 22, he played and started in all 16. In 23, obviously was at every single game, started every single game. You look at the pass defense for a linebacker, for coverage ability, he had 3 his first year, 6 his second year, and 3 again in his first year. Sacks. This is where I kind of expected him to be utilized, much like a Riddick off the edge. But they didn't really blitz him a lot. His first year, no sacks, 22, 2, and 23, 3.5. And then when it gets to tackles, it's very, very strange that in his second year had 100 tackles, but his rookie year and his year in most recent in 23, 41 tackles or less. I don't know what to make of this. Like, is this because is the production low because of the constant changes in the defense, or is it because they're not sure how to use Zaven Collins? Should they use him as a pass rusher? Should they use him as a middle linebacker or something of that nature? But I think it's kind of like a variation of both. Not really sure how to use the player, and because the defenses kept changing the schemes and all that, it kind of limited his production, but it's a bust in the end.
All right, next moving on to the New England Patriots, Joe, and quarterback Mac Jones. Again, they moved back in that draft. And we thought even when they were going to be there before that they were going to pick Mac Jones because it fit their scheme, their
they
system.
Stayed right where they were.
And did they?
And they ended up getting them. They didn't have to trade.
Right. They didn't have to trade. That's what it was.
No.
Yeah,
there was talk because the Niners picked third overall. And there was talk that the Niners were going to take him third overall.
Right.
And the Patriots were like, should we trade up? Should we stay?
Right. And then they ended up staying. And
they ended up staying. They're like, we'll just take the next best thing type of deal. But Mac Jones ends up sliding all the way down to the Patriots for them to take. And this is weird. All right. So in 21, his rookie year, played and started all games, right? He threw for 3,800 passing yards, had 22 touchdowns, 13 picks. And then after that year, what was it? Touchdowns. He had 22 touchdowns and 13 picks. And in his second year, this is where it gets really strange. It starts to dip down a little bit. 2,900 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 11 picks. And then you get to this most recent year where it descends again. It goes down, declines. 2,100.
Pulled in and out.
10 touchdowns and 12 picks. And this is the issue. When you look at the offensive coordinators that were available to call plays, they weren't real true offensive coordinators. They were guys that were just thrown into the mix because they were on the staff. They were defensive minded, calling offensive plays in the game situation. So I think it kind of derailed his development, which looked promising his rookie year under Josh McDaniels.
Yes.
And then when McDaniels moved on, it's like then you start to notice get a little bit worse. Is it him? I'm not really sure that it is. I think he's still got potential to be a starter, but I think it's more of the coaching and everything that kind of took a wild turn there with the organization. So,
right,
how do we say this? Like, I want to say he's not a bust yet.
Right.
To me, he's not a bust, but he's also not.
He's not a hit or
a hit either.
It's like so
because
at this
it's
point,
kind of
it's a miss,
up in the air.
Yeah.
He's had 1 year. His rookie year was amazing, and then the next two they kind of go due to difficult situations with that organization and the way the offense was being ran. It's not his fault. It's not his fault for having that decline. So I'm not going to say it's a bust. I'm going to say it's a potential hit with future considerations.
Well, that's what we're getting at. Because, again, it's funny you don't talk about the Patriots this much in this light, but I think he was just mismanaged. I mean, really, that's what it is. You mismanaged. You could see times when he's even shouting at the sidelines and looking at them and telling them more of what the play and what he's seeing. And he's like, "Come on, are you guys serious of what you're throwing at me here right now?
Many
like, what are you
F-bombs?
doing?" Yeah, and he's like, no respect for Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator who's giving me the plays.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously not. So then when, he's feeling the pressure and things like that, trying to make a play out of his own too, that's when he was forcing the fumbles, or the turnovers and the interceptions. And that's when it went from less touchdowns to interceptions. And then again, remember in that second season, he went down, Bailey Zappi went in to finish the remainder of the season and played fairly well. So that it started to raise questions between the organization, but then also fans. So then when it came to season 3, they started flip-flopping. Belichick's like, maybe we'll be Zappi this week. We're going to put Mac Jones in that one, And then he started to play a little bit poorly. Boom, made the switch again. It's like something that was uncharacteristic that we maybe thought of what Bill Belichick, and the great coach that we think he is. Never really had to do though with Tom Brady, and that's the thing of having a great quarterback in Tom Brady. You never really had to try and make those decisions like, oh man, he's really stinking. I'm going to pull him out now and put this guy in. So there was no question about that, and that's where I think, like you said, it comes down to poor management, and where I think in Jacksonville, it was because it didn't make sense to me to go to Jacksonville. I mean, yes, I'm sure
it's not his choice.
It's not his choice, I guess, but I don't know why they got. I know, but I don't know why they even grabbed him. I guess maybe for some backup
Insurance.
for Trevor Lawrence. I guess, but
You got to have the biggest
and
misconception.
like you said, not picking up his fifth-year option. So what are you doing?
The biggest misconception in the NFL is not having a very good backup. And I think the Jaguars have one. So in case Trevor Lawrence does go down this year with an injury, whether it be season ending or not, they're able to have a chance at least to compete still with Mac Jones and maybe see what he can do. And I understand not exercising the fifth-year option because you're not going to pay the guy the kind of money that it's going to end up with that fifth-year option. So it's a one-and-done type of deal. They're going to have him for insurance this year, and then most likely he's going to go to free agency. That's just really what's going to happen. Just like some of these other guys that are getting, like Fields is getting his fifth-year decline. So that's what we kind of have to expect. So, like, the free agent market for quarterbacks next year would be kind of
I tell
exciting.
you what, it would be exciting.
If it all plays out
And
that
how
way.
about he plays well? What if he goes to the Jets? And if Aaron Rodgers decides to walk,
Possibly. Oh, the Jets against the Patriots. It just makes so much sense.
Right?
Like, it'll be a revenge tour. You know what I mean? Mac Jones at quarterback.
oh, and
like,
some of the
in
wide receivers
future.
that they have there too. I mean, it would be nice for him too. I
But-
think it would be cool. But
But Jordan Travis is there. Jordan Travis is probably going to end up being the starter down the road. So would be a cool storyline
cool
for
storyline.
sure.
Absolutely.
But Mac Jones, like, there's going to be other opportunities to be a starter elsewhere. You know, let's just say, like, for example, you know, not Daniel Jones, possibly, but they got what's his name? Your backup quarterback
Oh,
there.
Tyler Taylor?
No.
At the Jets? Who are you talking about?
No,
What are you talking
Giants.
about? Oh, the Giants?
Yeah.
Drew
Lock.
Yeah, Drew Lock.
You got Drew Lock,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
Drew Lock honestly is going to compete for this job now. He's going to push Daniel Jones, and I wouldn't be shocked if Drew Lock ends up beating him out. You know, if he can get the chemistry down and everything with the receivers and the playbook. Don't be surprised, Giants fans, if that's how it shakes out. If Drew Lock does end up beating Daniel Jones, some people might laugh at that, but you know, better talent rises to the top. So if Drew Lock, now that he has a legitimate shot to win a starting job, he's going to give it his all. And don't be surprised if that ends up happening. But with Mac Jones, free agent next season, what's to say that Aiden O'Connell doesn't pan out for the Raiders?
I was just going to say that.
Where Mac Jones, very young, free agent, you bring him in on a prove-it type of deal and see what he can do for your franchise, have him compete there. So obviously there's going to be a lot of fun talk upcoming offseason, and we'll get to that when it comes.
Absolutely. All right, and talk about the Jets here. They happen to pick right here, and they went with Elijah Vera Tucker here for them out of USC.
Amazing offensive lineman. Yes, he had an injury last season where it kind of like ended the season a little too early, but let me tell you this. This guy is so versatile, and he's really good at any position. Guard, tackle, you name it. And that's why they were able to move him around like a chess piece at times, with Mekhi Becton being injured all the time, and just trying to figure things out up front for them. So you look at their offensive line now, they've done a kind of like an overhaul, added a couple of big veteran free agents with Morgan Moses, with John Simpson at guard, Tyron Smith at left tackle, and they got their draft pick Olu as insurance coming in there. It's pretty nice. It's a pretty nice situation that Rodgers gets to stand behind, and hopefully, you know, we always say this. Hopefully that line stays healthy for him, and the sky's the limit for the Jets this year.
All right, next we have the Los Angeles Chargers, and they got Rashawn Slater here out of Northwestern here to tackle.
Another really good offensive tackle. Was my favorite tackle coming out of that draft, and I really wanted the Raiders to grab him. But sure enough, it didn't happen. But Rashawn was amazing. Like, he was a plug-and-play type of starter, and that's exactly what he did with the Chargers. Now teaming up with Joe Alt this season, that just completes the offensive line. It's super stacked. They got nothing to worry about with that pick. Boom.
Yeah, definitely. And again,
they picked up his fifth-year option, if that tells you
there
anything.
You go. Yeah, and like just only the one thing, again, he had the injury in the second season. First season, he made the AP rookie team, and last season bounced right back again. So there you go. We've got the next, and here it is. The Cowboys, they go and grab Micah Parsons.
We all
You
know
have to
that
say
story.
That's a hit, then I
Can
guess
we
there.
just,
So there you go.
we all know that story. Oh, but one caveat of that is that when he first came in, they tried to make him a linebacker, something that he's not. He's not a coverage linebacker. He's not a guy that can play linebacker and just say, oh, I'm going to be here to play the run and all that. This is the type of dude like the Giants should have drafted when it was there, a guy that's just an absolute animal at rushing the passer. Put his hand in the dirt, let him play D-end, and release the leash. Just let him have it. So that's what the Cowboys finally got smart about this past season and just let him wreak havoc.
All right, here we go. And now we're getting to some of the quarterbacks as we're getting closer.
Here we go.
At the 11th pick, Justin Fields goes from Ohio State here to the Bears. We know now the difference with that. So, again, the jury was still kind of out on Justin Fields. I thought there were some positive sides to him. So, this is where it starts to get cloudy here with this again because he's still in the league. He just got traded, though. So,
what
still
pick
don't
was
know
that?
what the hell he is, though. 11th pick overall.
Yeah, so you're close to the top 10 as a quarterback. You definitely got to – the hope is that you pan out, right? Like, no pick is 100% surefire going to work out. But at that position, for the franchise it takes them, you're really, really kind of white-knuckling it, hoping that it all pans out. But and that's the thing is it never panned out to the level that they needed it to. And I don't know, again, you got to wonder about coaching staffs. You got to worry about, like, were the coaches in place the right guys to coach him up? Was the offense that he got into the right offense for him to excel? So obviously they believed it when they drafted him, but it didn't seem like it all kind of worked together. The chemistry was off. The execution was way off. And, yeah, you also got to take into consideration here, too, is that the offensive line was terrible when he got drafted. The weapons weren't there.
Yeah.
So he basically came into a terrible situation, and everybody expected him to, like, overcome all of it. Now, you look at Chicago now Fields wants to be there.
Yeah.
You got a way better offensive line, way better protection, more weapons to throw to. Fields is like in Pittsburgh and goes, dude, what the fuck? Why couldn't you do that for me and not let me go? Fields has got to be super angry about this whole situation. So I'll say for production-wise, he's going to be a bust for where he was picked and because of what he wasn't able to accomplish. But I don't blame him as the player. I blame more the franchise for not surrounding him with talent.
Yeah, I hear you there, too, same way. All right, now we are cracking to the top 10. The Philadelphia Eagles selected Devonta Smith from Alabama. Again, for me, I think that's a hit. I mean, they just picked up his they just extended, gave him an extension here. And it's kind of funny, though, with his career with the Eagles because they have so much talent. Sometimes people forget that he's even there. You know what I mean? And he's still producing. Like, you look at his production, you're like, wow, he's producing even like a number one, you know? But you've got A.J. Brown there and stuff, too. And so it's tough with the talent that they have.
Real simple. He just got another contract extension, got paid millions of dollars to stay with the Eagles, and he just averages over 1,000 yards every year. And yeah, he might only have 6 or 7 touchdowns for each season or whatever, and doesn't get to the double digits. But he is an electric wide receiver. That's why they gave him that big extension. And right now, as we speak, they're still working on an extension for A.J. Brown to lock him up.
Yeah.
So,
and then the only one knock that you had before is like we're sure about his stature and being frail or something like that, and he's managed to stay healthy. So,
but clearly that's not a problem.
Not a problem. Okay. Now we're on the Denver Broncos and Patrick Surtain. Again, that's gonna be
exactly.
Wait,
just hit the bell.
Just hit the bell. There you go.
Shut down corner. I mean, coming out of Alabama, the dude was that. He was a dog. He was that. He was him.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And he did everything that he did in college in the pros. Lockdown corner in terms of coverage. Would play the run. Extremely good tackler. Physical. Just a gift for the Broncos. So yeah, all day long a hit.
Yep. Next, we got the Carolina Panthers, and they selected J.C. Horn, Joe.
J.C. Horn. Now, this is the interesting part of J.C. Horn is injuries. When you talk about J.C. Horn, I'm a little. I love the talent coming out of South Carolina. I loved his ability to cover and everything, but injuries kind of stacked up for him. Do you have the pass defense stats in front of you?
Yep.
But
I do.
I feel. Can you read them off for a second? Because injuries kind of mounted up for him. I think like
he had only one his first season, second season 7, and 5 the third season.
Yeah, and he didn't play hardly
No,
at
he
all.
only played 6 games in the third season. He played 13 as most in the second season, and only 3 games, started in the first season.
So a guy that's picked in the top 10.
Yeah,
you're
22
getting,
overall starts.
You're getting like next to nothing for production.
Nothing.
So when you compare it, now this is the fun part is you get to compare, right? Patrick Surtain,
yes,
amazing. J.C. Horn was supposed to be amazing, but a dud. So yeah, he's a bust.
Yep. Even with Horn, when we talked about him, we thought he was kind of aggressive here for them too. We might even
grabby,
get a penalty
very
trouble,
physical.
but when you're on the field, I guess you're not getting
no penalties,
so
but no production either.
Exactly.
So.
Oh boy! All right, so here we go. The Detroit Lions at number 7 select Penei Sewell. There you go, out of Oregon. So
boom.
There you go. I mean, that one's not hard either. Again,
one of the best tackles in the game. The guy's carved out a nice position for him in Detroit. Lions fans absolutely love this dude, and how could you not? Super stud. Super stud.
But this is what you expect out of these top 10 type of dudes here. Here we go. All right, now the Miami Dolphins in it again, and they select Jalen Waddle here. There you go, wide receiver. There's another one, too. Another guy sort of like Devontae Smith in the sense that, too, just production, nonstop. Even though now you've got Tyreek Hill. When Tyreek Hill, showed up, you're like, oh, crap, here you go. But that didn't stop anything. They just did double time. Twice as much speed, twice as many yards, twice as many touchdowns.
Yeah.
Do in his Waddle dance.
Yeah, the penguin
Still
dance.
getting it down. Yeah.
The only thing that you could say is a knock on him is this past season he missed a few games. That's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, he's still able to get over the century mark, over 1,000 yards every year for the last 3 years, and ranging anywhere from 4 to 8 touchdowns each season. So hit all day long. This guy is dynamic. This guy is difficult to deal with. And then you pair him up with Tyreek Hill on top of it all. So definitely a big-time hit there for the Dolphins. And speed. Speed.
All right, here we go. It's we just did the Dolphins. Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase. There we go.
Oh, what a terrible pick. That's just a god-awful pick. I don't know what people see in this guy. All he does is win, no matter what. 1,400 yards in his rookie year.
Yeah.
Rookie year. That's a rookie wide receiver. That does not happen. Not to mention 13 touchdowns. Are you kidding me? His rookie year had that much production, had that much success. Second year, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. Third year, 1,200, 7 touchdowns. The dude was definitely an absolute menace for DBs to cover. Jamar Chase, huge win. Cincinnati Bengals, very, very happy with that selection. And on top of it all, they're very happy to pay the man because that's what's coming up next. Is he going to get a big-time extension? And T. Higgins, goodbye. That's all I got to say. He's going to be leaving.
Yeah. I mean, again, it was funny in the offseason before that he wasn't catching anything, and it's just like he's not
dropping
seeing
the
it
ball
right, whatever.
sometimes.
You're like, oh no.
Everybody's like, oh Jesus, what happened?
And then turned it right around. So here we go. Now we're on to
you think they played that off? You think that was all fake?
Who knows?
The camera's on. Drop the ball.
Then to become electric, just like that. And then we have the Atlanta Falcons and Kyle Pitts with the 4th overall pick, a tight end, but a receiving tight end. And the only thing with him is, again, just kind of production despite terrible quarterback play.
Oh, God.
At least yardage. Again, first season, he was like the major target, over 1,000 yards, but still no TDs. Right? He's got 1 touchdown there. Right. Second season, he's got 2. And last season, 3. This year, can I get 4? You know what I mean? I'm looking to see that with Kirk Cousins there. That production is going to elevate now.
I'll tell you right now, he's going to have 12 touchdowns.
Yes, because even you like to see what Kirk Cousins did with even with tight ends too. Much like Aaron Rodgers loves himself a good tight end.
We nitpick Arthur Smith for calling the plays that he did, and you weren't fully utilizing all of the talent that you had at your disposal.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts, are you kidding me? Guy is basically a large wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He cuts on a dime. He's super fast. He's got great length and hands. Why are you not using him as a lethal weapon that he is?
Yeah.
You also drafted Drake London to pair up with him, and then recently Bijan Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing, Art?
Yeah.
That's why you're fired. That's why you don't have a job anymore, because you had premier talent and you just didn't utilize them to their full talent. Like you said, over 1,000 yards his rookie year. Yeah, because he was the only damn weapon they had. You know, and then to go away from him like almost completely and like, oh, we got Drake London now, and we're gonna run the ball 4,500 times.
Yeah.
Like, come on, for you to go away from that, it's absolutely ridiculous. You're gonna see a drastic change in the offense with Kirk Cousins there. It is obviously a different offense, but an offense that's going to simulate the Rams offense, an offense that's going to be all about high percentage throws, get the ball out of your hands, efficiency, catch and run type of plays, where I think Pitts is going to be amazing in, let alone Drake London. And then, oh yeah, you got Bijan Robinson in the backfield that you got to worry about too. So I think the Falcons are set up really nicely this season to where I think Pitts is going to flourish immensely. But again, we're grading this pick right now. And again, you have to go with, you picked a tight end early in the top 10. And if he had the same stats as rookie year throughout, it'd be a hit.
Yeah.
But the fact that the decline now, it's not the player's fault. I'm not saying that, but it's a bust because of where you took this guy and the production that you were able to get out of him. I don't think it's the player's fault. I think it was coaching and the offensive play calling. But I think that this upcoming season, you're going to see a big turnaround for Kyle Pitts.
Yep. All right. Next up, we've got, damn it, I missed it. Where did I put it? There it is. I moved it for a second. Here we go. Now we're in the top three. San Francisco 49ers.
Quarterback.
Trey Lance right here. So, bust for me. Again, it's got to be. Because, again, they moved up and made sure that they did this in there. So, you're like, all right, 49ers, they're big on this. We were hearing Mac Jones the whole time. And then, boom, Trey Lance, whoa. And they grabbed him, and he sat. And sat.
Injury.
Injuries.
Injury.
Yeah.
That's what happened. His first 2 years, season-ending injuries. And we weren't thrilled with the pick to begin with. We had big question marks about Trey Lance.
Yes.
I actually didn't think he was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Look at his tape. All he did was run. You know, he threw the ball, but to guys that didn't have any coverage on them. And then he would take off and run most of the time. So how could you draft a quarterback that's supposed to throw the ball as basically a guy that just runs? So big question marks about him. But man, the Niners were convinced. They went with them, and they suffered for it for a very short amount of time because they took not one, but they took multiple quarterbacks, and Brock Purdy ended up panning out at Mr. Irrelevant.
Right, Mr. Irrelevant.
So good for them, but again, that doesn't really happen either. So Trey Lance, and the funny thing is where is he now? He's a backup with the Cowboys, and they traded for him.
Yeah,
but
I thought they
declined his fifth-year option.
Trade
declined his fifth-year option.
Yeah,
naturally, because So, is it potentially that we're going to see the Cowboys without a quarterback, after the season, because that whole contract situation with Dak isn't resolved? It doesn't look like it's going to get resolved anytime soon, and Cowboys might be willing to move on if they want to go and get their quarterback next year, maybe trade up. Maybe they don't have to. Who knows? We don't know what the situation is going to happen with their record at the end of the year, because if they struggle this year, they'll be closer to get that next quarterback. So very interesting. Another interesting situation in Dallas.
All right, next here, finally, number 2, Zach Wilson out of BYU is selected. I gotta say it's a miss too as well, and
I feel bad for Zach.
yeah,
feel
it's like
so
again
bad
a
for Zach
mishandling.
Wilson.
I think at some to an extent, but he is what I thought he was, kind of in a sense too. He's got that mobility and be able to do some things, but. I don't know. For 2 overall, I mean, I was surprised even at 2 overall. For me.
I'm not surprised with the pick. I'm surprised with the organization. You'd never gave this guy a legit shot to hold on to that job and really see what he could do. And people are going to make the argument like, oh, yeah, but when he was in there, like he made mistakes. He threw interceptions. Yeah, but when he was in there more often, you saw him start to get things down, execute, had a couple of wins with the Jets, then got hurt again. And it's like anytime this kid had like, you started to see traction. You started to see him get somewhere, and you started to see growth. Then he come down with an injury and was out for the rest of the year. And it's like, then he comes back again, and
or they would just say his job wasn't really secure, and you give him that, knock that confidence, and they would start somebody else. They would do that too when he wasn't injured.
Yeah, towards the end of his tenure with the Jets, yes. But the thing is you got to keep working with the kid. Like now, like you've. Think about where you are at now. You moved on from Sam Darnold. You drafted him high. You gave up on him really quick. You drafted Zach Wilson really high. You gave up on him really quick. Now, I get he has to stay healthy too, but you saw spurts of him being something, and it just wasn't consistent, but you saw it there. You pull the plug on him. He's gone. Now, instead of drafting for another quarterback, you're like, well, let's go the vet route. Let's go get Rodgers. You pay him buku dollars. You get him over here in a Jets uniform. And what's going to happen after Rodgers? There's no plan yet. There's no after Rodgers yet. He's already had one season-ending injury this past season. This is his second year of the deal. What's to say Rodgers after this season says, you know what, I'm hanging him up. I'm retiring. Mm-hmm. And now, guess where you're at? The same place you were 3 quarterbacks ago, where you don't have an answer. Now you have to try to get one. I don't know. It's like, I think it's poor management of that position. And yes, it's going to be a bust because of how high he was taken, and you didn't get a franchise quarterback out of it. But also, I think it's also the organization's fault for giving up on two quarterbacks that they had drafted relatively early.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And here we are finally at number 1, Jacksonville Jaguars selected quarterback Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. And the thing is, it's tough always with these guys that go number 1 overall, and they're advertised as a generational talent. And this is what I think has kind of been stigmaed onto Trevor Lawrence. Again, he was kind of going to be that next savior for Jacksonville. You know what I mean? And then it kind of hasn't really turned out that way.
I think they need to change that terminology to polarizing.
Right.
Because generational, you're saying, oh, this guy's the best of the last 10 years.
10 years
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like, no, you can't say that because you don't even know what he's going to turn out to be yet. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you see the talent. You're like, man, this guy's going to be amazing. Okay, fine. You can say amazing. You can say polarizing because that's what it looks like. But to say generational, I can't stand that terminology because these guys haven't done anything at the NFL level. And you're just giving him a label that, like, this guy's going to be the best of the best.
Yeah.
So, number 1 overall, Trevor Lawrence, he was supposed to be that.
Yeah.
Supposed to. Has played okay. 3,600 yards his first year, 4,100 yards passing, 4,000 yards passing in 23. You get to touchdowns. He had 12 his rookie year, 17 picks, 25 touchdowns his second year, 8 picks. Great year right there. Mm-hmm. And then you go to this most recent one, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So you could make a case where, because he's gone through a couple of coaching changes.
Plus he was injured a lot last year too.
And
playing injured.
Playing injured, but all quarterbacks do that. But, so I don't think that's like a
but
thing.
Even with the leg, though, it's tougher. It's different. It's tougher him playing with that leg injury and trying to throw and push into a throw than.
Why are you playing then? If it's that,
Justin
if
Herbert
that's big of a deal.
Playing with a broken non-throwing hand finger.
My thing is, like, my argument to that is Patrick Mahomes had that high ankle sprain, was able to play through it.
Played through it. Didn't play the best though either, but he played through it.
but he played good.
Yeah, good. Enough.
So I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing. Is like quarterbacks play through pain.
I know
all do it.
I do.
So if you're able to throw the ball and you're able to be out there, there's no excuses. If you're going to be out there and you're struggling, that's not best for what's in for the team. You need to think about your teammates then and take yourself out. So I mean, I just think that for Trevor Lawrence going forward, I don't think he's a great quarterback. I don't think he's nowhere near, obviously, number one overall. It's a bust in my eyes for Trevor Lawrence so far. Maybe he's going to get better this upcoming year. Maybe, because I know they're going to work out a new deal because they want to hold on to the fact that they have a guy who's adequate enough to hold on to that starting job. But I don't think he's the real answer that's going to take your team deep into the postseason and possibly win a Super Bowl. Because that's the whole reality of it, is after 3-4 years, if you're not absolutely convinced as a franchise that I see this guy could win us a Super Bowl one day, maybe not right now, but I think we can win a Super Bowl with him. If you're not convinced there, then it's time to turn the page and move on and go find another quarterback. Because that's the end game for every team. Win a championship. You don't view him like that, it's time to move.
Yeah, it's tough because for me, I mean, if his numbers are just about there, it just, they haven't really had much to show for it. That last season before that was playoffs, and then this other one was just a little off, and they only went 8-8. And again, Joe, he's got over 4,000 yards, in the last two seasons. First season still 3,600, so still throwing the ball a lot, getting a lot of it, and yes,
you get a lot
he had
of
a little
yards.
more interceptions here, but he cleans it up. And when was it? He had really a good wide receiver though too. Also, I mean, he had Calvin Ridley last year, which was nice.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's won games with Zay Jones.
No, I hear you there too.
Travis Etienne, when he's available, that offense is different. I mean, he's had weapons.
Right.
I wouldn't say that he hasn't had the weapons to win. He's definitely had them. And there was a little bit of a revolving door his rookie year. He had DJ Chark there for a small stint. But again, guys that can make plays, that can get the job done. But again, it's like they're spinning their tires so far and haven't been able to go anywhere. A lot of yards, looks impressive, over 4,000 yards, but results in terms of turning the ball over in 2 of the 3 years. Best year was his sophomore year, had low interceptions, high touchdowns, but to me, not consistent enough, not worth that number one overall pick.
Yeah.
And so far hasn't proven to anybody that he's going to win a Super Bowl one day.
Right, and it's the main decider when you look at it. Brass tacks. Number 1 selected overall. Bang, get it done yet. And there you go. That's where we are, but I still think the jury's out. But for this, like you said, number 1 overall, it's got to be a miss. So, and there you go. There's our 2021, our hit and miss. Joe, there was 12 hits in that draft.
That just has to show everybody. So and in the 2021 draft, when we were watching that draft, everybody, just like this year, everybody was convinced our pick was a good pick. Our pick's going to pan out in the first round. Our pick's going to be a starter. They thought the same thing in 2021 about every one of those guys that got selected, and only 12 of them were actually good selections. So if that doesn't show you how difficult it is to draft, then I don't know what to tell you. Most difficult thing is drafting at the NFL level. It is super hard, super difficult. Quarterbacks, forget it. It's like throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping you hit the bullseye.
Yep.
It's really all it is. So when teams do hit on their picks and they hit on most of them, it's a home run. You did very well for yourself that season. So if that has to be the indicator right there to prove to everybody how difficult it is to have a successful draft. Now, we're not going to dive into the rest of the draft because it would just literally take weeks to get through the whole thing. But nonetheless, we covered the first round. Only 12 hit. Everybody else suck. So next week there's OTAs happening now, guys. Voluntary practices are now transpiring. And what's interesting is that there are some teams that have a bigger attendance than you would assume for voluntary OTAs. Yeah, guy like Justin Jefferson's not going to show up. the stars typically don't show up. Maybe the quarterbacks do. But I know a lot of people kind of overreact with CeeDee Lamb not showing up to Dallas. Guys, do not overreact. It's voluntary. These guys don't have to be there. When it becomes mandatory and these guys don't show up, then it's a big deal. Until we get to that point, we're going to sit here and relax.
All right, that's it for us tonight. It was a long one, but we covered a lot. We did both drafts here all in one. So we had a lot of fun with it. It was cool talking to everybody. We have more in store for you guys now that the draft is completed. So
yes,
stay tuned for it. And
do us a huge favor. Head over to YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to let you guys know when we go live. Also, don't forget to like, comment, share, all that jazz. Become a member. Become a know-it-all. Be in the know. You can also take us on the go and be in the know anywhere you get your podcasts.
All right. See you guys next week.
Peace.
Join us next week from 8 till 10 Wednesday nights for more Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.